That just deserves a thumbs up, Dave. And Mike, sorry, Mike, your tie looks great too, Mike. Oh, and Lynn has a Christmassy sweater or a neck. Yep. Okay.
Gosh, you guys.
I love you all.
Yeah, Mike has a tie on. Is there a party afterwards or something?
I wear this tie every year, the last meeting of the year. And to Dave's chagrin, it's a Rush Limbaugh tie that was given to me a number of years ago. So,
well, tradition, you know.
And I see some of our other guests out there, Greg and Dave and Paul and Fran, I already said hi to, and Ranadeep. So I think the system is just so you're aware that you're muted. And then Matt Van Dyken, who you'll see on there, has the ability where when it's up for your time to make your presentation, then he'll let you in. So we'll see. If the box stays about this, then we don't have a lot of public comment, and we'll move along expeditiously. If all of a sudden the screen explodes and we have 50 people, then you probably know that we're maybe going to be delayed a little bit. So thanks.
Correct. And city council members, we're going to leave you unmuted. If you mute yourself, I have to then unmute you to allow you to speak, and that could be dangerous for my career. So I would prefer to just leave you all unmuted for the duration of the meeting.
How about visual?
You could, if you want your camera, that's up to you, or I guess the mayor's direction on whether he wants you to keep your video on or not.
I'd prefer it. It's just easier to be able to see when folks want to speak. You guys all know that I prefer us being in person because you can see body language and facial expressions, and that really helps me figure out who wants to say something or who's mad at me. Always makes it easier.
There's always that.
Doing a head count. Do we have Jay yet? I'm thinking we got everybody that's going to be here but Jay, right?
We know Kay's iPad. Any ideas if that could be Jay for some reason?
Quincy's the only one that's going to be gone that I'm aware of.
Yeah, Quincy's the only one. That's why I'm trying to do a quick count.
Well, I don't see Raul yet either.
Oh, no. Yep, you're right. When people aren't in their normal seats, it's harder to keep track.
I'm right next to you. I'm on your left.
Oh, that's my other left.
For next time, we'll ask Matt to try to arrange all of the windows on Zoom in the order that you sit up on the dais. Can you make that work, Matt?
It's stuck in our ways.
I think I know what that look meant.
I heard the groan.
Oh, I see Raul coming on.
Hey, everyone.
It looks good. All right, we'll give it a minute to see if we can get Jay on, and then we'll get things rolling. All right, I'm guessing not in the waiting room, or you're not putting in at this point, Matt. All right, well, let's get things started. I'm going to call the meeting to order of the Holland City Council. This is our second meeting where we're doing this through the Zoom format. So we're going to ask folks for continued patience with this and a little bit of grace as we work our way through this. Also, I want to make sure that I remind city council members, as we're calling the roll, when you reply during the roll call, just in the opening, that you state your name and then say that you are attending via teleconference from whatever the location is that you happen to be. I see that Jay Peters is coming on, so we'll take a minute yet just before we start doing the roll call. And just as a reminder, I think Jay can probably hear me now. Jay, remember that when we call the roll, say that, state your name and then say that you're attending via teleconference from, and then wherever the location is that you are attending from this evening. And with that, Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Bird. Peters.
Oh, I think Jay's still muted there.
I'm sending him the ask to unmute. There he goes.
Okay.
Is that better?
That's better.
We can hear you.
Attending by video conference from Holland, Michigan.
Garcia.
Present and attending via teleconference from Holland, Michigan.
Trithui.
Present and attending via video conference from Holland, Michigan.
Arnshorst.
Here, Nikki Arnshorst, attending via teleconference from Holland, Michigan.
Corbin.
Here, Scott Corbin, attending via teleconference from Holland, Michigan.
Hoekstra.
Here, Dave Hoekstra, attending via video conference from Holland, Michigan.
Raymond.
Lynn Raymond here, attending via teleconference from Holland, Michigan.
Mayor Box.
Nathan Box here and attending via teleconference from Holland, Michigan.
We have a quorum.
Great, thank you. We're going to start the meeting as we have for many years. First with an opening prayer, this evening given by our city manager, Keith Van Beek, immediately followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. And if you would, we'd ask you to join us. Keith, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. If you're so inclined, please join me in prayer. Dear Father, as we gather for this last meeting of 2020 as the Holland City Council, we look back and we're thankful. We're thankful for the blessings that you have bestowed, the safety that you provided to this community and to employees. We have hope also in a very difficult year as we enter into 2021. We have hope for the promise of future, of the things that we can provide as a city to our citizens. And tonight especially, Father, we ask for your wisdom. We ask for wisdom for council as they consider and do the business of the city. We request safety for our employees, for our citizens in this particular difficult. So it's in your name that we pray. Amen.
Amen.
And then if you join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Matt, do you have that flag still available?
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States
States of America.
and to
To the republic for
for
which
which
it
it
stands,
Stands.
one nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty
liberty and justice for all.
Thanks again, Matt, for having the flag handy there. We know we can always count on you. Next are our consent agenda items. These are items that are considered to be relatively routine and have been previously reviewed by city council members. And they will all be enacted with one motion unless a member of the audience or a member of city council asks for a particular item to be removed from the consent agenda and placed upon the regular agenda. We'll first have the city clerk read through the items on the consent agenda, and then we'll have the opportunity for the public and then the council members to move an item from the consent agenda. There was some discussion prior to the meeting about one of the items on the consent agenda that may need to be moved on the regular agenda because of a potential conflict of interest with city council members, and that's the item in regard to the hazard pay for election workers. I'm going to ask Matt if you can unmute Ron Vanderveen for me, the city attorney. And I know we'd pose that question to Ron as to whether or not that did pose a potential conflict of interest, because we've got a couple of council members that were election workers. I may be premature in asking you questions. We haven't listed it off yet, but I ask you anyway, because I got
okay.
Did you have the opportunity to take a look at that?
Yeah, I did. And because part of the proposal is to pay compensation to council members Hoekstra and Raymond, those two members would have a conflict of interest in terms of voting on it or debating it. And so they will need to be recused. But first, it needs to be taken off the consent agenda. Then when it gets to that place on the agenda where it comes up, you'll need to have a motion to recuse the two of them because of the conflict. And then it has to be seconded, of course, and then roll call vote. And it requires a 2/3 vote of the council members present.
All right, that's exactly what we needed to hear. We don't have the opportunity yet to take it off of the consent agenda until we actually have Kathy review the consent agenda. But now that we kind of know what's coming at us, we can be prepared for that. So Kathy, would you please review the consent agenda for us?
Items 4A, absence excused, Councilmember Byrd. 4B, approval of minutes, December 2, 2020 virtual regular meeting. 4C, oaths of office. 4D, Board of Public Works, update miscellaneous fees and charges. 4E, Board of Public Works, adjustment of water and sanitary sewer charges and assessments. 4F, Board of Public Works, WTP low service pump 3 repairs. 4G, Board of Public Works, pole attachment agreement contract approval. 4H, Board of Public Works, bill of sale and utility easement at Park Vista Place. 4I, Board of Public Works, MERS adoption agreement addendum. 4J, City Clerk, claims filed against the city. 4K, City Clerk, approval of hazard pay to election workers. 4L, City Clerk, Warner Vineyards, off-premises tasting rooms license resolution. 4M, Parks and Recreation, approval of professional services for management plan for Centennial Park. 4N, Finance Department, schedule of fees and charges for 2021, adopt resolution. 4O, Purchasing, purchase snowplow truck and equipment. 4P, Finance, October financial reports. 4Q, Human Resources, MERS defined benefit and defined contribution plan adoption agreement, addendums for the city and Holland Board of Public Works. 4R, Principal Shopping District, board reappointments and resignations.
Thank you very much, Kathy. Are there any members of the public who would like to have an item removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda? I'm not seeing anybody. I'm guessing, Matt, you're not getting any notification from anybody either. No, all right. Is there a member of council that would like to remove an item from the consent agenda and have it placed on the regular agenda?
Your Honor,
Yes, Mr. Hoekstra.
I would request that item K, approval of hazard pay to election workers, be removed from consent.
All right, and we'll then place that as item 12D2 on the regular agenda. Any other items that anyone would like to have removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
Motion to adopt agenda as presented and amended.
Moved by Trethewey. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Aaron's. All those in favor? Oh, no, we got to do a roll call vote on this one. Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Peters,
Yes.
Garcia,
Yes.
Trethewey,
Yes.
Arnshorst,
Yes.
Corbin,
Yes.
Hoekstra,
Yes.
Raymond,
yes,
Mayor Box.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. I get caught up on my agenda on this end. Next item on the agenda is public comment. At every one of our city public meetings under the Open Meetings Act, we provide an opportunity for public comment. This is an opportunity for any member of the public to address council on any issue that they would like to that is not otherwise on the agenda. We do have a couple of limitations here. One is that when you are called, wave your hand or put the hands up, and we'll try to call you in order. You need to state your name and address for the record, and we do limit your time to 5 minutes. Matt Van Dyken will be keeping track of the time. We don't have the warning lights here that we do have in city council chambers, but Matt's going to be timing it. And when your 5 minutes is up, he's going to mute you again. So you're going to have to be keeping track of your own time on your end. With that, is there anyone here who would like to address council?
Mr. Mayor, Doug Zylstra has his hand raised. Would you like me to unmute him?
Yes, please.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. Doug Zylstra, 152 East 24th Street, Ottawa County Commissioner for the City of Holland. Good evening, Mayor and members of council. I just want to spend a few minutes to go over Ottawa County Health Department vaccine distribution efforts to date. I know it's a topic we're all excited about. Kind of means that hopefully the light at the end of the tunnel is closer and closer. So first I want to mention that Ottawa County Health Department is teaming up with area health departments, hospitals, healthcare providers, universities, and Vaccinate West Michigan with vaccinatewestmi.com, where you can find the latest information about COVID-19 vaccine efforts here in West Michigan. As far as the vaccine itself, the health department is slated to receive our first set of doses, 975 doses this Friday, to be administered to Tier 1A individuals. In this case, EMS workers outside of the Holland Hospital and North Ottawa hospitals. And third, as we roll out vaccine distribution here in Ottawa County, it's my hope, and I think, everyone's hope, that we get as close to 100% take up here in Holland as possible. There is concern on that front. The county did a study recently that showed more than 70% of county residents would take the vaccine. However, just over 50% of them, of Hispanic and African-American residents, said the same. So I think there's definitely work ahead of us to increase those overall, and especially in the Hispanic and African-American populations here in Holland. I have reached out to Esther on this, are ready for coordination, as well as a number of neighborhood groups here in Holland. So my hope is that we can, work together and just, increase those numbers and make sure as many people can get vaccinated here in Holland do get vaccinated. So I would like to stop by a little bit more regularly going forward on the vaccine efforts with you all. But if you have any questions in the meantime, please reach out to zylstra@myottawa.org.
Great. Thank you, Doug. Matt, does anyone else have their hand raised?
I do not see any notifications. I see
We've got a couple there. I'm seeing, why don't we do Peter Bogart first? And don't worry, Peter, your time won't start until after you're unmuted.
Okay.
Can you please state your name and address for the record?
Okay. My name is Peter Bogart. I live at 235 North Lindy Street in Zeeland. And I just wanted to say climate change is an important issue to me. It's increasingly important to me now that my two youngest twin grandchildren are on the stage, and I wonder what kind of a world they're going to be living in 10, 20, and 30 years from now. So that's an important issue for me. I also wanted to take the chance just to thank you all for what you do as city council persons. As somebody who worked for the city at one point in time, I think I've got a point of view on what it means to work in your environment. And I know you do a lot of things that nobody ever gives you credit for. So I wanted to thank you for what you do and just offer that word of appreciation. Also wanted to thank you for reviewing the community energy plan. Thank you for moving that process forward. I'm glad to see that you've stepped up to take a look at that, and want to thank you for the opportunity just to present these comments. I'm looking forward to what the SDT may report out, and I'm hoping that it's in line with the mayor's dreams, that it be a big plan. So thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Peter. Matt, I believe the next one we had was on the screen. It says K. Greg Murray. And would you
I
please
unmuted? Oh, here we go. Thank you. My name is Greg Murray. I live at 385 142nd Avenue in Holland Township now, but I lived within the city of Holland for many years, and I've worked for Hope College now for over 34 years. I'm an ecologist and conservation biologist by training, and so I'm keenly aware of the reality of climate change and a lot of its consequences. And like Peter, I want to thank you for your focus on reducing our area's carbon emissions and to encourage you to try and do it even faster. Over just my own professional career, there have been a lot of population declines and even a few extinctions among the birds, reptiles, and amphibians that occur at my field site in the mountains of Costa Rica. But there's also some good news to give us hope for the future. A lot of recent research has shown that low carbon technologies can produce the cheapest electricity on the planet. And over the last decade, wind energy prices have fallen by about 70%, and the cost of solar photovoltaics has fallen by about 89% on average. So the result is that utility scale renewable energy prices are now significantly below those even for coal and natural gas generation. And they're even less than half the cost of nuclear. So there's a lot of reason for hope on the horizon. And this is an opportune time for City Council and the strategic design team to be doing the work that it is already doing. There's a really nice article about the details of some of that in Forbes magazine in the January 2020 issue. This is really important information as we head into 2021 and consider our climate change goals and timetable and the whole issue of reducing our own carbon emissions in Holland. So thanks for the opportunity to provide these comments. I know that what you do is difficult and often controversial, and it's a long slog sometimes. So I really appreciate the work that all of you are doing. And so thank you again, and happy holidays to everybody.
Great. Thank you very much. Matt, is there anyone else who has a hand raised?
Do not see an electronic hand raised, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, and I'm not seeing a visual anywhere. So one last call for anyone who wants to make public comment. Seeing none, I'm going to close the public comment period. Next item is item number 6, special presentations and recognitions from the mayor or council or city manager. And we have a very special one this evening. Matt, do you want me to turn it over to you first, or would you like me to do the resolution first?
That's up to you. I would actually toss it to Keith.
Let's do that. I know you've got control of the screen, Matt. That's why I figured you were in charge.
Yeah, hopefully you're
what
able to
we're
see
going
the
to
screen.
do, thank you, Mayor and Matt. This is an exciting night that's dampened a little bit, unfortunately, by the situations that we hold. Tim Vogley has been just a fantastic employee of the city. And there's a great picture of the good man there as we've joked, right? Our finance director emeritus. 14 years of service. So what we're going to do here tonight is, because we haven't been able to do kind of the open houses and maybe recognize him and maybe roast him in person a little bit tonight, Cinca did a great job of pulling together a variety of pictures and words, highlighting Tim's service. And maybe we'll just kind of rotate that in the background. And then with that, Mayor, if you want to particularly take action on the resolution that's before you this evening.
I would love to do that. And so while those pictures are going, you can hear my voice in the background with the resolution R 2020-.57 of the City Council of the City of Holland in recognition and profound appreciation of distinguished service by Tim Vogley on December 16, 2020. Whereas Tim Vogley has been employed by the City of Holland for 14 years as Finance Director. And whereas Tim has first and foremost performed his duties with the highest degree of responsibility, integrity, and professionalism. And as Finance Director, Tim has had the responsibility for the management and oversight of the city's finance, treasurer, and assessing functions. And Tim, during his tenure as Finance Director, has been a major factor in assisting the City of Holland in maintaining a strong financial position. And Tim has brought both state and national recognition to the City of Holland for achieving the highest accounting and financial standards, as the city has received the Certificate for Excellence in Financial Reporting for 28 consecutive years, and the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award for 18 consecutive years, both awards from the National Government Finance Officers Association. And Tim, during his tenure as Finance Director, has promoted and implemented the highest standards of accounting procedures and technology to assure the sound financial management of the city. And Tim, during his tenure with the city, has gained the highest degree of respect of his coworkers and elected officials. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the City of Holland and all of Tim Vogley's coworkers extend their appreciation for his 14 years of dedicated service to the City of Holland, and further hereby extend best wishes for the long and healthy retirement. And that the City Council also expresses its heartfelt thanks to Dawn, Mike, and Dan for their countless moments of patience and support that assisted Tim in many of his services to the citizens. And be it lastly resolved that this resolution of appreciation is spread upon the permanent records of the City of Holland, signed the 16th day of December in the year 2020. And Tim, the only thing I want to add to that, I've known you though that entire 14 years. You are one of the few people in the world that can take very complicated financial explanations and put them in a way that even I can understand. And I thank you for that. I've asked you many questions over the years saying, can you just please explain it to me in a way that I can get it? And you always have. So thank you very much, Tim. And I want to open it up. Is there any other member of council who would like to make any comments at this point? Mr. Trethewey.
Having had the pleasure of serving on the audit committee, I probably had a little bit more interaction with Tim than a lot of people did. And Nathan, you are absolutely correct. Even for us geeks that like numbers, Tim made them very, very easy to understand. I remember when Craig Rich mentioned Tim way back when. It was a good choice. And Tim, it's been extremely rewarding working with you. I've learned an awful lot from you, and wish you nothing but the best in the future.
Thanks, Mike. Anyone else? And oh yeah, Raul.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate a lot of the same sentiments that have been expressed about you, Tim. It has been an extreme pleasure being able to serve with you, and yeah, you certainly have a way with numbers and words, and I'd love this picture that's on here. Great. Yeah, and I believe that along with everyone else, while we would love to continue to see you around, in different times and places and spaces, but I think we also hope that we don't, so that you are genuinely and sincerely enjoying your retirement. Right? Go have fun. You've put in a lot of work, and you deserve this time.
Anyone else? Now, Tim, I read the official words here, but my understanding is that we got the resolution to you already today. Do I see it behind you, or is it there in your office?
Here.
So we've got that there for you already. And my understanding is there's also a picture that you received today.
I did. This will be a treasure for me. I was given this painting by Carolyn Stitch of the Holland City Hall. I have in my possession, as well as many of you may or may not know, I served in the city of Hillsdale for about 15 years. And there, a local artist did a drawing in a color portrait of the Hillsdale City Hall. And I intend at my home to put these two up side by side and reflect on my years of public service. And I have to say that I have nothing but the very, very best to say. The two communities I've served are very similar. In fact, I was telling Mayor today that when I got my W-2 back in 2007, it had the federal ID number for Hillsdale and a different W-2 from Holland. And the federal ID numbers are 1 digit apart. And the city halls are built the same year. They're built out of the same materials, has the tile roof, the sandstone base, the brick upper, pillars in the front. And it's remarkable the similarities between the two communities. And this will symbolize the investment of the years of my life in public service. And I am very, very grateful to Holland. I've been treated with the utmost respect. It has just been a joy. The people here are amazing. The employees are amazing. I've been fortunate to work with some mayors, with some city managers, with other department heads and staff, and everybody works extremely hard. They do their very best. There's really no screw-ups that I can think of. And it's quite remarkable to be part of a team that's been so diligent in serving the members of this community. And the fine people, the generosity of the citizens here is just astounding. And I do appreciate the opportunity to serve these years.
It's been a joy for us as well, Tim. As I said to you this afternoon, thank you. It's been wonderful working with you. There's one thing, I don't know if you can put the Carolyn Stitch photo up close enough to the picture up close enough to the camera for people to be able to see. There's a little personalization of it in the bottom left-hand corner. She actually included Tim's yellow scooter into the photo.
Nice.
Very nice.
Thank you so much, Tim.
So if I could, just to wrap it up here on this, thank you for everyone to take a few moments very appropriately to recognize Tim. Tim has been a wonderful asset and public servant to this community. We're going to miss him greatly, but we absolutely wish him the best. Just so the public knows, and for council also, his immediate staff did have some celebration with him last week. We've made clear as a leadership team that we're going to have Tim come back, make the 5-hour drive from Ohio at some point when we can all gather to celebrate him. But quite frankly, we have some good surprises for him too, and there will be some roasting. Because among the many very great qualities that Tim has brought to us is that he has a great wit, He has a great sense of humor. And he takes many things seriously, but one thing that he doesn't take too seriously is himself. So he's been a great colleague and a great gift to the city. So Tim, thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. Our next item, item number 7A, PA 198 tax abatement for Hudsonville Creamery and Ice Cream Company LLC, 345 East 48th Street. Mr. Van Beek.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. Matt, if in the background, we are looking, and you can unmute and bring to the forefront of Zoom Greg King with Lakeshore Advantage, and Kevin Phillips, who's the CFO for Hudsonville Creamy and Ice Cream, and both of them have joined us in the past. In a moment, we'll hand this over to them, so I think particularly Kevin can make any presentation, but then be prepared to answer questions of council. I always like to take a moment at this step to highlight this is a 150,000 square foot addition. And it's a investment of over $51 million. If you've been out there now, you understand that this is only the most recent addition that this wonderful company has made here in our city, and this is a big one. They have 73 employees currently, and they look to expand that to 45 within the next 2 years. I always like to take a moment here also to point out, because sometimes there's a lot of misunderstanding about what a tax abatement is and does. Basically, if you take that $51 million of investment that they're making, what happens is they're getting what's before you is an abatement that over 12 years, they would pay 50% of the taxes that they otherwise would, and that you would abate kind of on a sliding scale over the next 12 years, the other portion of that. And council gets sick of me saying that, but there's a perspective of the way that these are granted throughout the municipalities of the state, that we really like people when they make investments here in the community because of the jobs that I talked about. But also we like to encourage that. And then this is an investment that pays back to our tax base forever. So I'd rather have 50% of something for a short period of time instead of getting 100% of nothing if this company or another would not invest here. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Greg if he has anything to say from a Lakeshore Advantage perspective, but otherwise Kevin Phillips from Hudsonville to report on this project. That's a great investment in our community.
Yeah, Keith, you did a great overview, so not a whole lot for me to say here. Just for council's perspective, this is the 4th expansion project for Hudsonville Ice Cream in the city of Holland in the last 3 years. And this is their 2nd expansion this year as well. So just kind of want to give some context for it, but I will let Kevin kind of speak on the project and what they're hoping to do.
Thank you, Greg, and thank you as well, Keith. I just want to start out by saying on behalf of everyone at Hudsonville, we'd like to thank the city of Holland for considering our application. We really feel fortunate to be in an industry, especially this year, where the demand for our products has remained strong and we've been able to continue to manufacture. Our goal is to be a turnkey partner for our customers, which is why in addition to our existing product formulation and manufacturing capabilities, we're constructing a facility from which we'll store and ship ice cream to retailers throughout the U.S. So if you've driven by our plant, it's impossible to miss it. It's enormous. So we're also excited to be adding production capacity that will allow us to not only serve more customers, but to produce new forms of frozen desserts. So we're really excited about that also. With our growth comes a lot of opportunity to add to our team. And I'm happy to say that, Keith, the 73 or 75 number you talked about is today, it's more like 95. And we're way ahead already of our hiring plan related to this phase of growth. So we're really pleased with that. We've been welcoming I mean, it's every week it seems like we have 3 or 4 new employees joining Hudsonville every week as we grow. So we're really happy about that. And then I'll just make one more comment. Basically, effectively this week, we've always had a goal to have our teammates be able to, if they wish to be the sole breadwinner in their family. And we continue to make progress on that. Our starting wage effective this week is $20 per hour. So that's the minimum that anyone at Hudsonville would make. And I would suggest that with overtime and with bonuses, bonuses came out this week as well. Our team is earning well in excess of that. Even our newest employees are earning well in excess of that. So that's something that we're really proud of as well, in addition to the benefits package that we offer. So I'm happy to answer any questions. It's a really dynamic environment here, just constant change. And we'd really, whenever the time permits, we welcome anybody from the city council to come out, and we'd love to just show you our facility and the way it continues to grow.
Thank you, Kevin. Any questions from council members? Seeing none. Oh, yes, Mr. Hoekstra.
Well, Kevin, it's been becoming kind of a tradition when folks come to us asking for this sort of a tax consideration to inquire about the folks that they anticipate hiring and ask questions about how they intend to compensate them, because this is a give and take between the citizens of Holland and your company. So you're asking us to give up something in order to gain something, and more often than not, what is gained by the addition of jobs far outweighs the tax considerations that we give a company. But we ask the questions anyway, just to find out, if not to put a little pressure on employers that we're watching. And that's an important thing to pay people a living wage, particularly in this age. But based on what you've just expressed and past history with you all, I don't have to worry about you guys in terms of being proactive in providing for your employees and being assertive and understanding that when people make a living wage, it benefits not only the company, but the whole community. So I hesitate asking the question because I know what the answer is with Hudsonville Ice Cream, but I do want to take the opportunity again, affirm your company and your management in the philosophy that you've taken in how you compensate team members and employees. It's exemplary, really, and just want to say way to go and thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you for those comments.
Any other questions or comments to staff or to the folks from Hudsonville or Lakeshore? Did I see your hand go up there, Lynn, or not? Nope. Okay. We do need to do a public hearing on this, so I'm going to open the public hearing. Is there any member of the public who would like to speak in regard to this particular tax abatement item? I am not seeing anything. Are you seeing any hands, Matt? No. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing, and I would entertain a motion from council.
Will we approve, Hoekstra?
Moved by Hoekstra. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Trethewey. Any discussion by council members?
Maybe a field trip in the summer.
That would be great.
Any other questions, comments, discussion from among council members? I just want to echo Dave's sentiments. I have had the opportunity on 2 different occasions, I think, to take tours of Hudsonville. It is an amazing facility. It is so clean you could eat off the floor. It's a wonder to watch all of the ice cream being made. It smells great in some places and is freezing cold in others. It's a great field trip. It really is. And we greatly appreciate what you guys are doing in the community, not only for your employees, but with the investment in the community, especially in times of economic uncertainty. It's great to have good folks making great investments in the city of Holland. So thank you. We appreciate that.
Thank you, Mayor.
And with that, Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Garcia,
Yes.
Trethewey,
Yes.
Arnshorst,
Yes.
Corbin,
Yes.
Hoekstra,
Yes.
Raymond,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Mayor Box.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. The next item, item 7B, it's another PA 198 tax abatement for the El Perigo Company at 796 Interchange Drive. Mr. Van Beek.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. And Matt, if you could keep Greg King prepared to talk, and then two other members of the Perigo team that we're going to be welcoming here momentarily is Chris Rahor and Dave Smalla. I'm going to take a moment in between because this is really quite an amazing night if you think of it. If you take a look at the investment that Hudsonville Ice Cream has made and that you're considering this night, you pair that with Perigo, you take a look at really two anchors of our larger region and the investments that they're making. In a moment, we're going to talk about Perigo, where this is investment just in the city, but it represents really a larger investment in a lot of different projects across the region. And then you pair that with the opportunity we're going to be talking about later with Waterfront Holland, that even in the midst of a lot of tough times and concern about the economy, that there are fantastic things happening in this region. And we like to brag a little bit more about the city of Holland, don't we? So it's exciting, and it's a really exciting night, especially as we close out this year and look forward to the hope of next year. But I'll stop bragging and preaching, and what I'll talk about here is that Perigo, here, I expect that the representatives will talk a little bit more. Greg can certainly talk as a great partner that Lakeshore Advantage has had in this, where we were able to secure Perigo staying here. And in specific in the city of Holland, this is a 57,000 square foot distribution center that is totaling just about $13 million of investment. And I won't give the speech again, but again, this is another great example of sharing with an abatement that we're providing over a period of time, getting 50% of something, but we're really securing a wonderful investment here in the community and the jobs that go along with it. In the application, I know you've all read that they're looking at about 40 employees as this goes forward. So with that, I'd like to first hand it off to Greg, and then I think he'll introduce, and then Chris and Dave from Perigo, I think are going to join us also. Perfect. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you, Keith. Yeah, again, Keith's doing my work for me. He's providing kind of the foundation from which I can, talk a little bit on the context here. This is Perigo's third expansion in the Holland area in the last 2 years. This is its second expansion in the city of Holland. They did have a similar expansion in Holland Chowder Township earlier this year. So continuing to make Holland a big, economic driver for their company. So yeah, that's really all I really wanted to add. 40 jobs, $13 million investments. I will defer to Dave and Chris to present on the company and answer any questions from council.
Okay. This is Dave Smalla. Can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right. I'm the Director of Logistics at Perigo. If you might remember me, but you see a lot of us. 2 years ago, we were building 350 East 64th Street, just a little to the west. That was our expansion. I thought I'd be good for about 5 years, and I'm back already looking to grow. Perigo has added the oral care business to our portfolio, and then we had just announced that when that company bought another company. So this site is going to consolidate the Rainier Grand Rapids distribution site, one of our smaller lease sites across from Hayworth, and then 3 distribution centers for the Dr. Fresh business. They are scattered from Los Angeles, Missouri, and Ohio. They will all be relocating the distribution network into this site. This site was designed as a distribution center. A lot of times we lease buildings or build buildings or take over older buildings that were just general construction. This one is actually a very consolidated distribution site. 2 years ago, we took over a site that had already been planned. The same builder and developer is building this site. That building was 300,000 square foot. It could fit 30,000 pallets into it. This 370,000 square foot site is going to hold 46,000 pallets. It will be 1/4 of Perigo's distribution network and our receiving hub for all of our imports and domestically sourced products that we purchase, not make. We have manufacturing, obviously, in the Holland area, but Allegan is our largest facility site, and then Grand Rapids. This corridor, this I-96 M40 is being kind of taken over by our distribution network. It is a very convenient, very well built, interchange there. We have the ability to access our trucks and get them in and out efficiently. We had choices. We looked in Grand Rapids. The Holland site ended up being the best suited for us. I have seen that we can draw good labor into our site from the Holland group. We've worked with the Holland Board of Public Works. They've been good to work with to get internet access and utilities that are needed for these type of sites. We've had no delays from that. So I'm really looking forward to continue to grow into the Holland region. I started my career at Perigo up there on Waverly, so I'm hoping that I'll leave a legacy when I retire in 5-10 years, that I'll have a lot of Perigo distribution sites there to live long time after me. So
Great.
Wow.
Thank you, Dave. Any questions of council members for either staff or Scott or excuse me, Greg or Dave?
I was a little worried when I had to follow the ice cream. I didn't think I could touch that. So.
And I don't know, Dave Hoekstra, can you hear me? Are you planning on asking the question that you always do?
After that last speech, if the fear of God needed to be put into anyone, I think that was accomplished. But with Dave and his group, I don't think that's necessary.
All right. I just wanted to make sure you had the opportunity.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
All right. If there are no other comments, then I will open up the public hearing in regard to this particular PA 198 tax abatement. Is there anyone here from the public who would like to speak in regard to this particular agenda item? Any hands raised, Matt? No? All right, seeing none, I will close the public hearing and I will entertain a motion from council.
Motion to approve the 12-year tax abatement 198 for Perigo as stated in the report.
Moved by Trethewey. Is there support?
Support.
We never talked about
Support by Ernst Horst. Any discussion? All right, again, Dave, I'm going to say the same thing similar to what I said in regard to Hudsonville ice cream. Thank you guys for the great investment in the community, especially in this time. I feel I'm a little out on a ledge because Tim's not here, but I'm going to rely on Lynn to help me with the math on this. If I added correctly, that's over between these two. It's 500,000 square feet of new construction just between these two, and $64 million worth of investment in the community in the midst of a pandemic. That says a whole lot about the companies here, business interests here, but also says a whole lot about the city of Holland and the confidence that people have in this community. So we want to thank you for that. We want to thank you for the investment and for the jobs, and we want you to have all the success in the future. Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Trethewey,
Yes.
Ernst Horst,
Yes.
Corbin,
Yes.
Hoekstra,
Yes.
Raymond,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Garcia,
Yes.
Mayor Box.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is item number 9, written petitions and communications. In this time of health uncertainty, we have established a special email address for folks who are interested in addressing council and speaking to council, but who are not comfortable either in attending the meetings publicly, which we did before the last couple of meetings, or attending through the Zoom meeting process. That is publiccomment@cityofholland.com. So if you would like to address council on a matter, you can send us an email at that address. We gather those emails during the time period between our regular business meetings. And the cutoff time for those is about 3 o'clock in the afternoon on the day of the meeting. So if your, excuse me, if your email comes in after 3 o'clock in the afternoon of a meeting, it will not be included with this batch, but will be included with the next batch. We do not read these emails out loud at the meetings, but we do accept them as a group into the record. And we've got a number of emails this time. We have 16 separate emails in regard to climate change, and then one email that it was in regard to a complaint against the city. And I would entertain a motion from council to accept these into the record.
So moved.
Moved by Trethewey. Is there support?
Support.
Support.
Support by, I'm going to give that one to Councilman Garcia. And we need to do a roll call vote. We're going to do a roll call vote on all of these. Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Ernst,
Yes.
Corbin,
Yes.
Hoekstra,
Yes.
Raymond,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Garcia,
Yes.
Trethewey,
Yes.
Mayor Box.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. The next item is been inserted into the agenda from the consent agenda. It is item 12D, and I think it was 2. I forgot to write it down. 12D2, approval of hazard pay to election workers. Mr. Van Beek.
So I'm going to take this partly because I know that if I present it, Kathy will really like that because
yes,
she loves calling the roll, but otherwise she loves being even more behind the scenes. And this is
Excuse me, Your Honor.
Yes, yes, yeah. Mr. Hoekstra.
Point of order.
Yes.
Before Mr. Van Beek gets too far into the discussion, as discussed before, excuse me, since this item is considering a direct monetary compensation, potentially to me, I would ask to be recused from the discussion and vote.
All right. Do we need a second to that, Mr. Van Der Veen? Is that correct?
That would be correct. A second, and I mentioned a 2/3 vote earlier. I just want to be clear: the 2/3 vote is a vote on the recusal, not of the approval of the item. And then once they're recused, I think their microphones ought to be mute. They can't participate in any discussion on it.
Okay. And just another point of clarification: can we do one motion for? I believe we're going to have 2 different members of council that are going to be affected by this.
Yes, you may do one motion for both. If somebody wants to have a separate motion for each one, you can do that too, but one motion for both would do.
All right. I saw Lynn Raymond's hand. Lynn, do you want to amend Dave's motion?
Yes, you can. I would also request to be recused.
Okay. And are you doing that in the form of an amendment to Dave? Well, we don't have a second on Dave's motion yet.
Oh, I second is a motion.
All right, I'm gonna let's make sure we stay in order here. Dave had a motion on the floor. We needed to have a second before Lynn, you amended it. That's my fault for leading you down that path. I apologize. Nikki just seconded Dave's motion. Now, Lynn, would you like to amend Dave's motion?
I would like to amend Dave's motion and include myself as also requesting recusal.
All right. Do we have a second on the amendment?
Support for that amendment.
Support by Trethewey. Any other discussion by council? We need a roll call vote. 2/3. Do we need to do a 2/3 vote on the amendment as well? Probably yes.
No, just a majority on the amendment, but then the main motion would need the 2/3 vote.
All right. So Kathy, would you please call the roll? This is on the amendment to Mr. Hoekstra's motion to add Councilor Raymond.
Corbin.
Yes.
And I skip Hoekstra and Raymond?
Yes.
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Garcia,
Yes.
Trethewey,
Yes.
Arnshorst,
Yes.
Mayor Box.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right. Now we are on to the vote in regard to the original motion, which would recuse Councilor Hoekstra and Councilor Raymond. Kathy, would you please call the roll? And this one will require a 2/3 vote.
Hoekstra, oops, nope. Peters,
Yes.
Garcia,
Yes.
Trethewey,
Yes.
Arnshorst,
Yes.
Corbin,
Yes.
Mayor Box.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right. So we have recused Councilor Hoekstra and Councilor Raymond. Back to you, Mr. Van Beek.
Yes, and thank you, and sorry for that was the right process to take care of that appropriately before I give more of the background. We're just really thankful in this process, both to Kathy and to her elections point person, Brenda, who not only did a fantastic job of running this most challenging election, but also Brenda went out and found this specific grant that was really helpful in covering some of the additional costs and arrangements that we put in place to ensure the safety of both the citizens who voted, but also all of our workers. And in particular with this grant, it did allow for the possibility and in fact encouraged, and you saw in your materials that other communities did the same of they paid a form of hazard pay to all the workers. So what happened is at the end of this grant, and it was all grant dollars, there's no other city dollars that are involved with this. Kathy and crew came up with the idea that I definitely recommend support of to give and distribute that hazard pay to all the people that worked the election as described in the memo. And I think it's perfectly appropriate if I can just weigh in where we had two council members that, in addition to being their council members on this day, they were just good citizens and they participated in the process by working that entire day as election workers. So if there's any question, that's basically why they recused themselves. But they did do that most wonderful of jobs on election day of working that entire big long day. So we did make sure we went through a lot of process here to make sure that everything is covered. And again, definitely recommend this that was brought forward by Kathy and her team.
Thank you, Keith. Any questions from council members for staff? Keith, I've just got one, and it's to either you or to Kathy, and I know it was in our report, but I'd love for the public to be able to hear it. We're not talking about huge dollars here. Based on what I said, anywhere from what, $25 additional to an election worker up to a couple of $100 to the senior level staff people. Is that correct?
Correct. Basically connected to the amount of hours worked. And we certainly had some staff that for weeks and weeks and weeks put in extra effort. So that's why you see some of that sliding scale. Kathy, certainly not what I'll call the typical, but the worker that worked the entire day, usually that fell in what category? I know I say it wrong, but this would recommend paying that worker
100. It'd be $100 for the full day.
Okay, and those were long days.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm trying, probably not terribly successfully, to get across to the public that nobody is doing this work for the money. And certainly these workers did not anticipate that they were going to be getting this extra hazard pay. And not only were they working long hours at a difficult job, they were doing it in a difficult environment as well. Yeah. All right. Any other questions from council members? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion in regard to this item.
Motion to approve.
Moved by Trethewey. Is there support?
Support, Corbin.
Support by Corbin. Any discussion? Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Garcia,
Yes.
Trethewey,
Yes.
Arnshorst,
Yes.
Corbin,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Mayor Box,
Yes,
motion passes.
great, thank you.
Thank you.
And I believe we can welcome back Mr. Hoekstra and Ms. Raymond back into the fold as we move on to the next item, which is item 6.1, gifts. Kathy, would you please review the gifts for us?
Mr. Mayor, I know you did skip over one thing there.
Oh, I apologize. Oh, I did, Finance Department. I'm so excited about that. I'm sorry, Lynn.
That's like a Freudian slip, right?
Of course. You know I love a good discussion of audit reports. Mr. Van Beek.
Yes, and with the humor there, which we all get, but you know, this is one of the biggest items that council really has the responsibility over. So even though I'm going to introduce Lynn McCammon in a moment, and she's going to introduce Paul from Raymond, this is a fantastic report, just to let you know, and they'll cover that. But it's always critically important, and even though, you know, Tim, we joke, Tim always made numbers really interesting, but we know that, you know, for a lot of us, only can make them so interesting. This is really a very important oversight matter for council. So we're excited to provide this report. And I'm going to introduce Lynn, who will say a few things and then hand it off to Paul from Raymond.
Yes, thank you, Keith. Tonight we will see a report of the audit. This is for the year that just ended on June 30th, 2020. As in the past, the city has contracted with Raymond and Associates to perform the audit, and they did so. We were very pleased to report a very smooth process despite the challenges that COVID brought. It was done virtually, so a lot of work on the part of the finance staff getting ready, and then coordinating with Raymond to conduct the audit. So Paul Matz from the Raymond has joined us this evening and will present. We'd like to thank him and his staff for the audit process, which went smoothly, like I said. And he did report this already to the audit committee who's reviewed this. So with that, I'll turn it over to Paul, and thanks for joining us, Paul.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Lynn. Thank you, Keith, and good evening, council members. If I could take just a quick second also, you know, I did have the opportunity over the past several years to work with Tim, and every year it was a pleasure. And so I just wanted to add in my 2 cents also, congratulating him and thanking him for the outstanding work that we've been involved with him over the past several years. It was a pleasure also to get to know Lynn this year a little bit as well. And I think, as she stated, and you'll hear from my brief report here, everything went very smoothly from the audit perspective. We did have the opportunity in the last week or so to meet with the audit committee. You can share your thanks with that group for sitting through the hour-long version of this meeting on your behalf, and had some really good conversation there. It was an enjoyable conversation. So, you know, certainly we did do the deep dive during that meeting. And then I also just wanted to say at a high level, to echo Lynn's comments, this was a very unique audit year, doing everything virtually. Typically we take up a conference table in the city offices for a month or so, and you know, this year everything was done just via Zoom meetings and emails, and we received outstanding cooperation from the city and support. The timing was really, you know, no different than what it's been in previous years, and that's really a testament to them providing us everything so quickly and responsibly. So we very much appreciate that assistance. So then I'm going to share just a couple of quick items, high level, on the results of the audit, and then, you know, certainly would be happy to answer questions that anyone might have. So as you can sort of see on the slide here, it talks a little bit about what our goal, our responsibility as part of the audit is, which is ultimately to issue an opinion on those financial statements as far as whether we believe in all material respects those are accurately stated financial statements. And, you know, certainly what we issued this year is the unmodified clean audit opinion, which is the opinion that you want to achieve during the audit process. We can't give a better opinion or a higher opinion than that clean audit opinion. So yes, we believe those are accurately stated. Then that they'll be useful for this group in their decision-making processes. So we're going to move on to the next slide. Thank you. So part of what the auditors report on as well in our written communications are if we have findings or recommendations, matters of concern, whether related to financial reporting or related to internal controls such as segregation of duties. We do spend a lot of time looking not only at the numbers, but the system of internal controls that's in place behind the numbers as well. And just pleased to report here, if you've looked in the reports, you will simply have not seen any of those types of items reported. And so hopefully along with that clean opinion, this is another very positive takeaway from my comments that the systems that are in place are really well designed and really functioning well. No concerns, no findings noted from our perspective. So the financial statements seem like they grow several pages every year. If you've opened the PDF, you'll see that the financial statements are 271 pages this year. Understanding that everyone doesn't necessarily have the same interest in spending hours going through each and every page, I just wanted to point out a couple of items that I thought might be of particular interest, which are found pretty early on in the financial statements, and that's the transmittal letter and the management's discussion and analysis. The transmittal letter provides a lot of good narrative on some of the accomplishments that took place during the year. There's information on the awards that the city received. And so it goes a little bit behind the numbers and shares some information on the accomplishments of the city during the fiscal year. So I think that's an important item and would encourage folks to read through that in some detail to get a better understanding of some of those non-financial accomplishments during the year. And then the management's discussion and analysis is also another good summary, just a few pages that provides a high-level summary of the current year. But there's also comparative information presented for June 30th, 2019 as well. So you've got some fluctuations, some trends that is presented within that document. And again, it's just a handful of pages that provides a good summary of the financial results for the year. So I wanted to spend just a moment then touching on the general fund. Certainly all of the funds of the city are presented within the report, but I always like to at least touch on the general fund results for the year. You can see here that the total fund balance in the general fund at June 30 of 2020 was $5,091,056. And that is sort of broken out into two different buckets. There's the true general fund piece of $3,747,000, and then the amounts that are internally tracked separately regarding budget stabilization of $1,343,851. And then for the current fiscal year, there was just a very small change in the fund balance of the general fund, which was an increase of $30,630. To provide a little bit of perspective on that ending fund balance, I have just a couple of percentages here. And what these percentages represent is what your ending fund balance is as a percentage of the total general fund expenditures for the year. So you can see that if you include those budget stabilization amounts that I noted on the previous slide, you have about 22.9% of expenditures sitting in your ending fund balance. Another way of thinking about that is you have about 2.7 months of expenses in that ending fund balance amount. Work with a lot of municipalities, and certainly we see a lot of differences in those percentages. But for a city of your size and compared to a lot of the municipalities that we deal with, that remains a very healthy fund balance position from our perspective. The next slide then just touches on the net pension liability. I know there's a lot of general discussion regarding pension liabilities, and there's been a lot of activity at the city over the last couple of years with bonding for that liability. Just wanted to note here that that ending liability for 2020 is about 15.2 million, down a little bit from the prior year balance of about 16.7 million. And do note that of that amount at the end of June of 2020, just shy of $6 million of that is what's allocated to the Holland BPW. And then my last slide on the numbers is sort of the sister component to the pension liability is the other post-employment benefits, or OPEB, which is the retiree health care. Again, all actuarially determined amounts here. The amount at the end of June of 2020 was about 5.2 million, down just slightly from about 5.5 million at the end of the previous year. And again, there's a smaller portion here, but about 740,000 is attributable to the Holland BPW. So those are the areas of particular interest I wanted to be sure to share. Again, I thank staff tremendously for the cooperation and support that we received, and would be happy to answer questions that anyone might have.
Any questions from council? Nikki, did you have one?
No, I didn't. I just, it was a long report. You're right, 200 and some pages. And the narrative was, it was interesting. But you have to go through these numbers just to find out where we are. I'm glad. I was surprised in some of the charts how much unemployment there was, a change in unemployment over the last few years in the Holland area.
Any other questions for staff or for Raymond? All right, great. I will entertain a motion.
Motion to adopt or to accept the audit for information.
Moved by Trethewey. Is there support?
Support.
We're going to give that one to Aaron Source this time. Support by Aaron Source. Any discussion?
Yes.
Yes, Mike.
Paul, you listened well. The executive version of the executive version of the executive version. So it worked out perfectly.
Indeed.
As always, you've done a great job again. We appreciate your complement of staff. I know that Lynn and Tim and the whole group have put an awful lot into this. It had to be challenging. We found, as the audit committee, we found really no different than what Paul had presented. We did not have a whole lot of questions because it was presented so well. The four of us that sit on that. So again, congratulations. And thank you very much for watching out for us. And one thing he spared us of is that GASB is rolling up its sleeves again, and next year is going to be a little bit uglier. So Lynn's got her job cut out for her coming up to some of the new rules, and those are always exciting. So looking forward to that. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Anyone else? All right. Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Trethewey,
Yes.
Arnshorst,
Yes.
Corbin,
Yes.
Hoekstra,
Yes.
Raymond,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Garcia,
Yes.
Mayor Box.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Lynn, and thank you, Tim. Great work. And thanks for the executive summary. We know how important it is, but we also have a whole lot of faith and confidence in both the audit committee and in the folks that we know are in the trenches on this. So thank you for the great work. Appreciate that. Now I believe we are on to item 6.1, gifts. Kathy, would you please review the gifts for us?
The city manager's office is pleased to report the following gifts: Parks and Recreation, Salpres Scholarship Program, cash receipts October 26th through November 29, $57. Public Safety Services, Police Operations K-9 Program, various donations, $50. Steve Pohl, $90. Jose Negra, $30. Public Safety Services, Police Operations K-9 and Honor Guard in memory of Captain Bud Bohr. Larry and Marcia Ginzik, $50. Marilyn Houting, $60. It is recommended that these donations be accepted with appreciation, credited to the appropriate account, and an expression of gratitude be forwarded to said donors.
Thank you, Kathy.
Motion to.
Go ahead, sir.
Motion to accept with appreciation.
Moved by Trethewey. Is there support?
Support.
Mr. can't hear us from where he is. So, Mr. Garcia, support by Garcia. Any discussion? And typically we do a voice vote on this, but we're going to do a roll call on each and every vote tonight. So Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Arnshorst?
Yes.
Corbin?
Yes.
Hoekstra?
Yes.
Raymond?
Yes.
Peters?
Yes.
Garcia?
Yes.
Trethewey?
Yes.
Mayor Bach?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Great. Thank you, Kathy. Next item, 6.2 Waterfront Holland Implementation Consultant Engagement Agreement. Mr. Van Beek.
So if you haven't picked up yet, I am excited about a lot of things tonight because there's a lot of great things that are on the agenda. But as great as the audit was and Perigo and Hudsonville is, this one is probably the one that in a lot of ways I'm most excited about. So while I give a little context and introduction, I'm going to ask Matt to start bringing on some of the people that are going to be making the presentation tonight. First, this is absolutely a partnership. You all know that the process that we've been working here is shared between myself and Dave Koster, the general manager at HBPW, who's been a great partner in this project. And then also our consultants from both Hitchcock Design Group and SB Friedman. So Matt, I think you know who's out there, and we'll introduce them here momentarily.
They're all in.
I don't think Jeff is with us tonight, but Fran and Terry and Ranadeep. So just the context here, because I think it's important, otherwise we'd miss this. Council knows, but those that are listening in, Waterfront Holland was this fantastic opportunity that we have to take Holland to the next step that was really triggered by the decommissioning of the JDY, the James D. Young plant, on the shores of Lake Nakatawa in our near downtown. And we entered into pretty much a year process, end of 2018, all of 2019, where we had extensive civic engagement process with just amazing involvement and participation by the citizens of Holland and other partners, including Holland Charter Township, where we said, we want to know not just what the opportunity is for the JDY site, but also for the larger, what we came to call Waterfront Holland, our downtown waterfront. And out of that, council adopted, as outlined in the memo, really an exciting Waterfront Holland vision diagram, statement, and principles at the beginning of this calendar year, specifically on January 8, 2020. But this is one of those largest projects that, really is large, exciting, but it's complex. It involves short-term opportunities. It really involves a future that we fully expect is going to be long-term opportunities going out for decades. And we also know that it has the added complexity of, at the end of the process, because of charter requirements, we expect there will be the ultimate form of citizen engagement in a citizen vote on voting both as it relates to BPW property, but also on the potential sale of property on waterfront. Because of that complexity and the need and the really drive and the wisdom of council to say, we want to get this right more so than we want to do it quickly. You approved in February an agreement for professional services with the team that you're about to hear from Hitchcock Design Group and SB Friedman. They'll go through a little bit what that original was, but then absolutely the results of their work since that point, which really focuses on the moving forward at this point and what we're calling the implementation strategy. So momentarily, again, the team is Fran Hood, Rude, Ranadeep Bose, Terry Hogan, and I don't think Jeff Roa was able to join us tonight, but he's definitely been an important member of that team also. Ultimately, the last thing that I'll say before being able to answer any questions moving forward to is that you do have a staff recommendation this evening, and that staff recommendation is to totally align behind there's multiple strategies that the consultant team is going to present tonight, but we do believe that there is a best option strategy of moving forward with implementing Waterfront Holland that our consultants are about to outline in greater detail. And then also to engage with a phase 2 engagement for professional services agreement with this same team so that we can continue to move this exciting opportunity forward. So with that, I'm going to hand it off. Matt's going to continue to drive in the background, and I think Fran is going to kick us off.
Sure. Thanks, Keith, and good evening, Mayor and council members. Thanks for having us tonight. We're excited to talk you through everything that we've been up to over the past several months and give you an update and talk a little bit about next steps. So Matt, go ahead and go to the next slide. Keith already introduced us, but Jeff Rail from Hitchcock Design Group is unfortunately not able to attend tonight. So it's myself, Ranadeep Bose, both of us are senior vice presidents with SB Friedman, and then Terry Hogan's an associate with our firm and has been working closely with us on the project. So with that, I will actually hand it over to Ranadeep to talk a little bit about our role and approach, and then he's going to talk through the agenda in the first part of the presentation, and I'll come back and talk through the strategies once we get to the end of the presentation.
Great, thank you, Fran. So this slide lays out our scope of work. Now we know that there was a vision that Keith referenced, that you've come together, the Waterfront Holland Community Vision, and our engagement was really to take it from a vision and set you up on a path to implementation. So how do you go from that vision to implementation? So what we actually started doing was what we would call test the market, actually gauge developer interest, talk to developers, see what they would, what their interest is on the properties near the downtown, on the waterfront, and use actual information right now on property ownership, on characteristics of sites, and just seeing in what level are those interests and the constraints aligned with the vision, and then set you up on various strategies for you to actually give the staff and us feedback on which strategy you select. And that's what we are actually going to ask also in this meeting, is to have some direction on strategy. But that's really where we are. We are really taking you on a path all the way to implementation, and Fran later in the presentation will be actually talking through the various strategies that you have before you. So we go to the next slide. So we have the first part of the presentation, which is what I'll go through, is just the waterfront opportunities, the existing conditions, some of going back in time and showing you the vision and concepts that you had, and then providing that developer feedback and some of the, and then basically using that feedback to really craft strategies, which is what the second item is. And Fran will walk you through these strategies that we've come up with, and hopefully we can give you enough information which allows you to make choose a path and towards implementation and set the direction for the implementation of Waterfront Holland. So we start off with the waterfront as is right now. What are the existing conditions? And one of the key things you've seen development in the downtown. There's a significant amount of downtown development momentum. When I came here into the downtown, this is a very charming downtown. Obviously, people, you see investment activity in there, and you see that this sort of westward march on 8th Street is, of course, where the heart of your downtown is, and you see this westward momentum. So the downtown investment seems to be wanting to move towards the lake, and we want to be able to leverage that. There are a mix of uses. So you do have the downtown, which is a mixed use, walkable environment. The waterfront right now is primarily industrial, at least the part, if you go down 8th Street in the area north, it's an industrial working waterfront. And that is part of the factor that we need to consider. How do we make it a public amenity? How do we create a potential future public waterfront easement? There is public ownership of land, which we'll get into shortly, but how do we take some of this and bring the people and connect to the waterfront? And these were some of the vision elements that you were articulating in your vision plan. Another key point was about the circulation. Pine and River are one-way pairs. Right now, there's a lot of truck traffic which goes from downtown. It's important delivery to the businesses in the downtown and other areas, but then they do go through the River Avenue corridor. And maybe as part of this future vision, we could have a two-way Pine, and you could use Pine to get out of downtown. So those are just some of the principles and that you might want to consider for the future. But that's sort of the existing conditions in a way, and the momentum. And if you go to the next slide, this is again coming up with the principles that were in your downtown vision or waterfront downtown. And there was this idea of access to the water. You want to have foster the concept of fostering community accessibility to the water through public access, easements, connections. So it's not just about getting to the waterfront, but also an easement concept was introduced on the water. Protecting waterfront resources, ensuring economically feasible uses. So this idea of these various districts, the Anchor District, Harbor District, and Uptown District was part of that vision plan. The Anchor District was like a mixed use location on the waterfront. Harbor District was a destination really focused on the JDY property that is publicly owned property and the decommissioned power plant. And then the Uptown District was reflective of the downtown expanding northwards up towards the window of the waterfront. So all of these concepts were already there in that vision plan. And there was this desire of encouraging a diversity of uses and users, and just enhancing this connection to the water, and then this public and private development opportunities in these district areas. And this idea to celebrate the waterfront was a component of that vision document. Go to the next slide, please. And the vision was manifested in these four concept visuals in a sense. And of course, these were conceptual. These were ways in which those principles could essentially work through in the future. And there were various ways in which you were trying to balance the existing reality of an industrial waterfront with the idea of public access to the waterfront, public easement, and also this idea of a mixed use location on the waterfront. So it was a balancing act that was coming through in here. And the various options were really looking at ways in which you could simultaneously have a working waterfront in the short term as the existing users are there, such as Padnos and Verplank and Brewers. But then on the long run, perhaps really out in the future, maybe this would be mixed use and private development, but also public uses in the future. So there were varying options which were considered. In some cases, the waterfront edge was changes, but all of those were part of the vision concept. So if you go to the next slide, what we've been charged to do, though, is really look at the specific ownership options that there are, and specific players that are in play, and figure out a way to move forward with the realities of current property owner interests. Of course, that can change over time. And so we wanted to actually, pull together this information, which shows the key property owners which have waterfront access, which includes the City of Holland and the JDY site, and then the site towards the south. We did also include the major property owners, Padnos, Verplank, and Brewers, which have property. So we have the Toolworks and the JDY as the city-owned stakeholders on the waterfront, but then other private owners which have active existing uses that we do have to work with. And so in terms of your options for implementation, we basically have two broad, sort of path options. And there are multiple strategies which work with these two broad options, and that we'll get into. So there's more strategies, but big picture, you can focus on publicly owned land. That's the specific properties that you own and control. You own the JDY site, you own the Toolworks site, and there are other properties which are not waterfront sites that you do own. And because you have site control, you could just focus on those existing properties and you have more control on the outcome. The other option is a little bit more complicated, where you are considering land swaps. And this was alluded to in the vision document. So this is not a new idea. And the idea is there are adjacent property owners to the JDY site, like the Padnos, the Verplank, and Brewers. And so you could look at land swaps. And the whole benefit of that is perhaps if you had the mixed use concept at the anchor district, which is basically towards the south, where Verplank and Padnos is, if you actually had the development there, it's more a natural continuation of the 8th Street downtown momentum. That is the key point. Whereas if you focus on these existing properties, you come up with a use or a site which is surrounded by industrial uses. So that's the trade-off of working with the land that you own. You have more control, but then the other situation with the private land swaps, you change the geography because of the context, and you do benefit from that. If you go to the next slide. So this is, we did talk to 7 developers and we got their feedback, and they concurred. They basically said that downtown is desirable and is a strong market. And that's obviously, you see that in all the investment activity downtown. People want to be here and people want to develop. And of course, just having waterfront property is very rare, and it's a unique resource. It's a unique public asset. And therefore we have to do something which is transformational and really enhancing the downtown. And of course, their interests were in different geographic locations. There was some interest in the uptown district, but most of that was city-owned property, which the city does not want to develop. So that uptown district interest is not really actually feasible, because the city wants to would hold on to that, and that's not a development site really. At the Harbor District, there was interest for a destination use, really, and so there has been development interest in that location. And then for the anchor use, this is where the land swap option comes in. There is also interest from a group of developers who would look at mixed use redevelopment with residential. So there's definitely real interest from the development community, and they understand the industrial adjacencies, and there is a total understanding that the industrial uses, some of those will likely remain, definitely in the near term, potentially for the long term, but there will be an industrial adjacency in any of these scenarios, and they are aware of that. And then they're also aware of the need for a public referendum. And so there is, and when we talked and conversed with them, we made sure that came through. Any concept which is advanced. Any development that occurs on land that is publicly owned, that is city owned, would require a referendum to move forward. But they did want some clarity from the city, something which gives them a path towards implementation, sort of clear goals of what the city wants, so they can actually move towards really having successful development there. That was sort of an expectation that the development community wants, some level of certainty of what the city wants, so they can move forward.
Ron and Dee?
Yes.
This is Keith. I just want to jump in, and you're exactly right. And, that they really want, kind of an indication from the city. I do want to circle back to Uptown. Yeah. You're exactly right in how you described that. And yet, just because of, just to be clear for anyone that's watching and for council too, while we don't see correctly, and it's said correctly here too, city-owned parcels are not available for development. So we're not looking, from coming out of Waterfront Holland and other conversations with council, we're not looking to develop those city-owned parcels. And yet, even as you look at the schematic there's a lot of interesting and exciting things that the city is involved with, really, that we're going to pursue in a parallel pathway, not with these consultants, not with kind of the harbor and the anchor opportunities that council is well aware of, as far as putting some public reconstruction along 6th Street. And then definitely Ron and I and the team are pursuing possibilities of expanding College Avenue past 6th Street right now, which not only activates window on the waterfront, kind of as you see on that graphic, north and east on our property, but also opens up private property that right now is primed for development also. So just to be clear there, where for council or for anyone else listening, I think you're going to see activity in that area. It's just that's activity that really is going to stand alone and really separate from this process that Hitchcock and Friedman are helping us with.
Can I ask a question at this point?
Sure, go ahead, Dave.
Well, to Keith's point, in talking about the Uptown District, certainly there are areas and parts of that is part of Window on the Waterfront and other pieces of it that we would certainly want to protect and keep. Are we so sure that all of that area that's there highlighted in green is off limits? Because that would, that's kind of news to me.
I think, Dave, just to respond to you, that may be a discussion for another evening, because we as council have the ability, and Ron can correct me if I'm wrong, or Keith, to declare property surplus if we decide that that's the process to do. But unless and until we do that, we don't have the ability to develop it other than city projects. Am I correct in my kind of rudimentary statement there?
Yes, you're correct on that, because that is also waterfront property. It would trigger a vote. Some of it may be able to split off that's not waterfront. Would have to look at the park master district to see if, or the master plan on parks to see if it's designated as a park under the master plan. That also requires some further action. Part of this, a good chunk of it that's shown on the picture that's on the display now is encumbered by restrictions, because it was past use for dredge fill, and would have to deal with the Army Corps of Engineer restrictions on that as well. But yeah, there is a path forward where that could be done if council so desired.
Well, I bring it up because as we looked at previous iterations of visions for that area, and in connection with the Harbor District and the Anchor District, to me, it seemed as though that was a very comprehensive look at the whole area. And so I'm not sure that we should completely dismiss that potential when we're looking at in the development along Lake Nakatawa.
Dave, if I can weigh in on that in a moment, I'm glad that we're providing this clarification. Then, not only most recently with Waterfront Holland and the concepts that were there, but really planning processes that we had gone through before that even came up with the name window on the waterfront and some of the Bill Johnson processes that we went through. All of those were pretty universal in saying that the public property that we maintain at this point, we wanted to remain as public. Probably maybe some source of the confusion right now is there's 2 blocks in there. I know I can't point it out, but if you look at between Central and College and some of the blocks like between 6th and 5th and 5th and 4th and 4th and 3rd, I think a lot of people right now think that's window on the waterfront too, because none of it's developed. And the reality is kind of where they're hovering over with their hand right now. There's not development there. And the concepts that you're referring to, those are areas where we do envision those being developed. It's just not currently public property, that's private property. So what Waterfront Holland talked about is that the city would invest in public infrastructure. And you'll recall like our conversations with Ryan Kilpatrick pointing out how important that investments in public infrastructure is critical in really encouraging and developing that private investment and development that we're interested in. So if that helps. Now, as Mayor and Ron said, if you want to revisit that at some point, we absolutely can. But the planning documents that we have to date have all pointed in the same direction of not making that public property available for private development.
Well, I recognize that there are parcels that are privately owned, and that's not part of the consideration. I would, just as we've looked at other publicly owned pieces of property in the downtown area as well as the whole city, and we've considered what to do with those, I would suggest that as we look forward, and particularly in the development potential of the north downtown, there's a section there along 6th Street in particular, and I get that there used to be a dump there, and there's all kinds of obstacles and hurdles to jump over, but along 6th Street, we've seen development there, and there's potential there, I think, to use part of the publicly owned property as a catalyst for other private development. So, and I'm not suggesting we do that next week, but I'm also not suggesting that we throw that baby out with the bathwater, because there's potential there, I think. That's my only point. I'm done.
All right. Thanks, Dave. All right. I think we'll continue on.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, I think we could move to the next slides a little bit, which effectively take that same spirit that was there in those 4 concepts that were displayed earlier. And we've, Hitchcock helped us develop these 2 concepts, which reflect those 2 options that we talked about in a way, like where we have a mixed-use destination at the Harbor District, and that this is really focused on the JDY site. So if you work with the property that you owned and you created a mixed-use destination district there, that's what and this concept envisions the Brewers, Badnos, and Verplank stays as is, and a lot of the connections to downtown would occur, I think, with the conversation we were just having, the Uptown District moving forward, public investment in connections such as the College Avenue extension, east-west connections, and between a combination of public and private development, you basically have a connection to this Harbor District development on the JDY site. So that's this idea where it's property that you control and you move forward with. And so that's this particular option where the industrial users stay as is. And then the other option, concept B, is where we look at a land swap option. And this is where, either Verplank, also using the city-owned tool work site, but then other adjacent industrial sites, whether it's Padnos or Brewers, those arrows denote that there are multiple ways in which you could do a few land swaps to consolidate this anchor district as a mixed-use destination. On the JDY site, because of its location and adjacent industrial uses, it's hard to envision residential there. It would have to be a destination use. But in this vision, it's really an extension of downtown. You could have a mix of residential, entertainment. I think the festival market idea has more reality in this option, where it's a more mixed use extension of the downtown. You still have the uptown window on the waterfront related adjacent development, but you have a more clear east-west connection down 8th Street. And so that's where the two concepts are really visualized in terms of how we look at the property owner restrictions that we have right now. And with that, I think I'm going to turn it over to, we can certainly take questions, but Fran is going to come and talk about how these particularly come up with strategies to implement either concept A and concept B.
Yeah, thanks, Ranadeep. And so we can go ahead to the next slide, Matt. The idea here is that we really do have those two discrete alternatives, right? We can focus on redevelopment of the JDY site, or we can focus on the anchor district, and there are separate paths for the most part to get to those two alternatives. But we have thought pretty carefully about this and worked with Keith and with Dave Koster to really develop these strategies. And we think we're also giving you some alternatives where you don't necessarily have to choose one or the other today in order to move forward. So in terms of the actual pathways to implementation, the way that we're thinking about this, and you see here just the first two strategies, is really starting with who's in control of the process. So these first two options that you see here are really the city leading the process. And these are the alternatives if you do have a clear preference for either this concept A, which is the JDY site, that waterfront destination, or concept B, which is the gateway to downtown. If you wanted to move forward on JDY, we have a strategy related to a public process with a request for qualifications and a request for proposals. I'll talk about each of these in more detail. There's also an opportunity for strategy 2, which is that land swap option to unlock the opportunities for the anchor district, where the city would be the master negotiator and be leading that effort with the private landowners to try and facilitate redevelopment there. So those are the first two options where the city's really leading the process. If you go to the next slide, Matt, we do have another alternative where the city takes more of a background role. So city leading the process, you're at the forefront, you are setting the stage and doing the heavy lifting. There's another alternative where you take a little bit of a step back and react to what the private market brings to you in terms of development options. These could be for either of the sites. You could have developers come forward with a proposal for JDY, or they could come forward with a proposal for a land swap for some variation of the gateway to downtown. And then, understanding that there's always gray area, and somewhere in the middle, we've also developed a strategy where we think you could have kind of the best of both worlds, which is that you're controlling a process, but then also giving the private market the opportunity to negotiate a transaction and come forward with a proposal. And so that's the next option, the next slide, which is the strategy 4, which kind of combines elements of a couple of the other strategies and does give you the opportunity to have a result that's either of the two concepts at the end. You would not have to decide on those today. So with that, I will talk through each of the strategies and then we'll come back and summarize. I know there's we have a lot of information here. We've talked about 2 different concepts. Now we have 4 different strategies. So we are going to go through it just a couple of times to make sure that it's clear. And of course, we can answer any questions. So in a little more detail then, strategy 1, this is a process related to disposition of the JDY site. If everyone agrees that, let's just go ahead with proceeding with the land we own, you could go out and have a public process where you start off with soliciting developer qualifications and interest in the site. You would do outreach. You would then have just a full process where you're evaluating the developer's qualifications and financial capacity to do this work. You would have a short list of developers ultimately that you're requesting a proposal from. The city would select proposals based on the particular mix of uses that is the most attractive to you, based on financial considerations, based on the ability of the proposal to catalyze new development and meet the objectives of the vision. You would have all of the information to select between alternate proposals on the site at that time. And then once you've selected a developer, you would proceed with the public referendum based on that selected proposal. So that's kind of a pretty straightforward option if you were to decide to go down the path just for the JDY site on the front end. Moving to strategy 2, again, this is the city being in control of the process here. And, this is kind of the city all in as master negotiator. If you strongly feel that you want to move forward with the anchor district and feel like you have the sort of capacity to undertake the negotiation efforts, you would actually be the entity to negotiate that land swap, with the idea that if you really want this to happen, there may or may not be developers that would put in the level of time and energy required to work with the private landowners to get to the point of coming to the city with a proposal. So the city would actually negotiate with Verplank and potentially with Padnos and Brewers to negotiate a land swap option, so that you could have the option to swap their land for a portion of the JDY site. Once you got to the point of having that option to swap the land, you would then start a public RFQP process. So this we kind of, you would do a bunch of work on the front end. It's a high risk, potentially, high reward strategy, but you would do the work to obtain this option and then take the option out for an RFQP process, because you would have the control to then solicit developers for, say, the Verplank site and a portion of the Padnos site. After that point, it's the same process as in strategy 1, where you're reviewing qualifications, you're reviewing proposals, and ultimately selecting among developer proposals for the land that you have an option for. We think then when you get to the end of it, you're actually doing a public referendum for both sites. So the JDY site you would still own, even though there's an option to swap it. So you would be taking that to a referendum for use as industrial, because you would have industrial users moving to that site to be transferring title. And then depending on the specific mechanics of the deal, you would also probably have title of the Verplank or other sites come through the city. So you'd be also doing a referendum for that for a mixed use development. So again, there's negotiation of a pretty complex transaction in here that would have to be undertaken by the city, but it is an option if that is a path that you would consider, and that if you wanted to move directly towards the concept B that Ronadip had talked about. So shifting then to strategy 3, there is an alternative. Not all cities want to sort of go all in terms of negotiating land transactions. It's not something that folks do very often, and is generally out of the comfort zone of many municipalities. And so sometimes folks do sit back and sort of react to the private market. That is certainly an alternative that we have here, where you don't have to make a decision at this point, but you can wait and see what developers propose to you. So folks know, generally that the JDY site is potentially available for redevelopment. You have the vision document out there that shows some of the alternatives for the Harbor District and the Anchor District. And so the city could just sort of wait for a developer to come forward with a proposal. The benefit there is that, you don't have to make a decision, and you don't have to put a lot of effort in on the front end, but you also don't have much information if a developer does come to you with a proposal. Somebody might have a proposal for JDY. You don't know what the alternatives are, or whether there would be other developer interest in the site. You also might not have information to evaluate the any financial request. You can certainly do your typical due diligence, think about the financial aspects of the deal in terms of evaluating what's being asked, but you wouldn't necessarily have any comparison point. And so it's very hard to make a decision without knowing what the alternatives might be. So, you know, we do have the potential benefit of not putting as much time in on the front end, but you don't have as much information to work with. And then ultimately in this scenario, you also still have to go to public referendum ultimately. So if you did negotiate with a developer directly, you would have a transaction and then you would have to go to the public. And we think there's a potential challenge there just in terms of getting folks on board if we have not been able to establish that we've kind of uncovered all of the stones and reached out to multiple developers. So, you know, I think it's an option, but because it's not a public process, it could be a little bit more challenging in terms of getting to the public referendum stage. And then we get to strategy 4, which is, you know, the idea that had kind of maybe the best of both worlds, which is the public process, which we think, you know, when you get to the referendum, it is important to be able to show that we've thought about and reached out to developers and that we've given folks kind of a fair shake in thinking about what might be possible and what folks might be able to do on the waterfront, but also, you know, provides an opportunity for the city to consider proposals for both of the sites or both of these districts, the Harbor District and the Anchor District. And this alternative is really, you know, it's a public process with the RFQP, but rather than only allowing proposals on the JDY site, we could actually have a provision, you know, that allows for folks to basically propose a land swap. A developer could say that they would like to use the JDY site for industrial uses, as long as they are providing a mix of uses and meeting the goals of the vision in other ways on an alternate waterfront site. The idea here is that in order to be responsive to the RFQ and the RFP, that a developer would have to actually have that land swap option. And so during the process, a developer that was interested in proceeding with the Anchor District would be negotiating with the private property owners after we start this process and would come to the table with their proposal, a negotiated land swap. So it puts the onus on the private market to proceed with those negotiations with the private landowners rather than having the city be the one who's doing that negotiation on the front end. You know, you could go through this process and you might not ultimately have a developer that's able to negotiate with the landowners. But, you know, in this scenario, that risk is more on the developer than on the city to go down the path of the initial negotiations. So the other, you know, there are a couple of aspects of this that we think are beneficial, which is that you can sort of explore both of these alternatives and ultimately get to the point of having a comparison of proposals for the two sites. It's never going to be, you know, it's not apples to apples. We don't have the same mix of land uses. The results wouldn't be exactly the same, but you can at least consider the financial implications, the alignment with the vision, all of the catalytic impacts and connections to downtown simultaneously when you're evaluating proposals through this strategy. So we think there's a benefit there just in terms of the amount of information that's available. So I think with that, we can go to the next slide, which is just an overall summary of the 4. Again, I know there's a lot of content here and a lot of different strategies and concepts. So we can kind of talk through this here, and we can even pause on this slide, I think, and maybe answer any questions you have. But, you know, once again, we have what we think are sort of the key aspects and some of the key goals of the city running along the left column here. And then, you know, also just key considerations when you're thinking about making a decision about a strategy or making a decision about how to proceed with land disposition. And then we have the 4 strategies along the top there. So, you know, one key thing to think about is what is the development outcome? How does that align with the vision? That goes back to this idea of, are we focusing primarily on the harbor district or on the anchor district. We're not talking about window on the waterfront here because, we do think that is sort of being handled separately and addressed separately. So, if you do, again, we've talked about this a couple times, but if you have a clear preference for one or the other in terms of the districts, you could choose strategy 1 or 2, today and decide to move forward with either an RFQP or try to, act as that master negotiator. Strategies 3 and 4 do leave the options open for you to make that decision at a later date because they could result in either. We also think about the level of city sort of control and level of involvement. Strategy 1 and 4, you do control the process and the timeline for those 2 sort of RFQP-led options. You can get started down that path. Strategy 2, is the high level of city involvement. That is where you're negotiating everything. And so there's sort of a time commitment, a financial commitment, and just a risk that you go down the path and ultimately things may or may not proceed down if you go down that path. And then strategy 3, you don't have you don't have as much involvement if you're waiting for developers to come to you, but you also don't have control over timing. You're dependent and reliant on the private market to sort of come to you to get things going. So there are things you could do to facilitate that, but you don't have as much control as you do in some of the other strategies. Transparency, we know that's important because we are going to have to go to referendum ultimately. Again, 3 of these do have a public process, strategies 1, 2, and 4. Strategy 3 does not. Another consideration is just thinking about, what do you have available to you in terms of information when you're making a decision? And again, we think with any of the RFQP alternatives, 1, 2, and 4, you are making a decision based on detailed proposals. So that's, that's a benefit of those strategies. But for strategy 4 is the only one where you would have proposals for alternate sites at the same time. So that's where you could have a proposal for the JDY site at the same time that you have a proposal for a land swap on, say, the Verplank site. So, I think the first 3 strategies, you may or may not have you wouldn't have a comparison of multiple districts at the same time. One thing I guess we haven't talked a lot about tonight is the financial considerations here. We do have a site that has an existing power plant on it that may require demolition. I think many of the developers that we've spoken with sort of assumed that the plant would be demolished for redevelopment just because you'd have to have a very specific type of development in order to be able to reuse that. If it's important to the city, you could certainly make that apparent in an RFQP process or in negotiations. But in either case, if we're reusing that building or if it's a demolition that's needed, that's a cost that's likely going to have to be borne by the city, at least in part. Probably we could recoup some of those costs in terms of scrap or things like that, but there's definitely remediation on the site that would be needed. And so that's typically a public cost. So really in any of these scenarios, there will be, we expect some level of city financial participation. The exact details are going to vary. But if we get into any of the strategies related to a potential land swap with an industrial landowner, there are going to be additional costs that are layered on there. And so, we don't have numbers. We're not going to have numbers until we actually see proposals from developers. And so, again, any of these scenarios where you do have a public process and a structured process, you can request exactly what you need to see in terms of financial information. So you can make a comparison of proposals, but also think about what the city has available in terms of assistance and whether you're comfortable with the transaction. You can certainly, and we work on deals all the time where it's just a city working with a developer that has a proposal. There are ways to be very careful and structure deals. If you're just working with one developer, But in scenarios like this, where, you know, it's a very particular site or a very particular type of complex transaction, you do have to just be careful, you know, to make sure that that you have as much information as possible related to the financial aspects when you're thinking about a transaction like this. So, you know, again, strategy 4 would give you the option to at least have alternatives for these 2 districts simultaneously that you wouldn't necessarily have with the other strategies, where you would be focused on maybe one district or another, or just responding to a developer who's come forward with a proposal. So I think, you know, we do have one more slide, which is just kind of what the next step in the process is. We do think that where we go from here is basically that council has to decide how to proceed. Is there a particular district that you're interested in that you want to pursue through strategy 1 or 2? Does strategy 3 sound more like something you're interested in terms of sitting back and waiting for a developer to approach the city? Or is strategy 4 something that you would consider? And then, you know, once there's direction on what the strategy is, there's probably some messaging to developers, messaging potentially to the public, or refining of the vision graphics, and then implementation can start. And I think, you know, that's really the content of the proposal. So we can either, the next slide is just a map of the area, but we could also land maybe just on that. If you go back up 2 slides, just that table that had the alternatives, that might be a good place just to stop and where we can answer any questions that the council might have.
All right, yeah, questions council has.
And Mayor, if I can just interject one thing here, I'll make it quick, I promise. Because in our recommendation, you'll see that we did have that's from a staff perspective, and really talking with the consultants, there is a recommendation that staff is making, and it might be obvious, but we're recommending strategy 4. And Dave can speak on this too, but we really believe that it's kind of, I think Fran said, kind of a best of both worlds. It's having your cake and eat it too. It preserves the most options, lowers our risk, really takes a look at multiple districts. So if that helps or hurts, I don't know. You certainly don't have to take our recommendation, but to be clear, we're recommending strategy 4.
Thanks,
Keith. Can I add maybe just, one other thing?
Fire away, Dave.
Yeah, thanks. Kind of building off from what Keith is saying there too, appreciate that. We think strategy 4 really sets us up for the eventual referendum best as well, in the fact that the community will know that, all options were really considered. That could be a problem if too soon council picked a preferred, location for development and didn't really pursue it fully. So we are encouraged really by strategy 4. I think the other thing, just quickly to point out, is you might ask the question, how is this going to be evaluated as well ultimately when we get to that point? And I think, that also is the great work of the team here that we've assembled and are recommending continue on to this next phase, that with Hitchcock Design Group and SB Friedman, they've got the ability to really do both that financial and non-financial assessment of the potential benefits to the community that could come in from the various proposals when you get to that point. But in addition, Keith and I have also talked about supplementing that process somewhat by making sure that those that were involved with the original framework development from a vision and principle standpoint also would be taking a look to see how well the proposals that ultimately come in align with those principles that were identified by the community throughout that year-long process of Waterfront Holland. So that's all I really wanted to add to that. Thanks, Mayor.
Great. Thank you, Dave. Questions? Yeah, Lynn.
Yeah, I thank you for that, because I was obviously leaning towards strategy 4 as well. And a couple of things just struck me. I think something Rana-Deep said earlier was to do something transformational with the properties and the waterfront. And I think the best way to to do that is by approaching it with strategy 4. So we have the broadest picture and the most options to address. And then I really like, Dave, thanks for sharing about setting it up for the referendum. I think that's really helpful too. Making sure that the community knows that we were looking at everything we possibly could to make this the best option. So I would agree also with strategy 4.
Great, thanks, Lynn. Anyone else? Go ahead, Raul. You turned green on my end. Did you have something there?
No, I mean, I'll add comments since you put me, you announced me. But yeah, no, I would say, I mean, to me, it seems like a no-brainer, honestly, that number 4 is the best of kind of all the options and sets us up. I think, I think in the best situation for what could be, and also for whatever can be, to proceed in a successful way with public input and opinion. So I'm for 4.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Ranadeep, Fran, Terry, thank you, and obviously Dave and Keith as well and other staff that's been involved in this. You guys did a really good job of laying out all of those options. And frankly, I agree with Lynn and with Raul. For me, this is almost seems like a no-brainer decision. We are not developers. A city is not typically a good developer, and I would really like to see the creativity of what the developers who do this all the time are able to come up with. And this needs to be financially viable. We could build something that we thought was really cool, but if it was not financially viable, it's going to just wither on the vine, and I don't want to see that either. And so I'm leaning very heavily toward strategy 4 as well. I think what we're looking for here tonight are 2 different things. The first thing we're looking for, I think, is a recommendation from council in regard to which strategy to go with. And then depending on the results of that, looking at whether we want to continue to engage our consultants moving forward. Am I correct on that, Keith?
You can do that in 2 separate motions. We actually are recommending just that you can do that in 1 motion if you want. But you're correct. There's kind of 2 things buried in that 1 recommendation.
Okay, so I guess I'll leave it up to council in terms of what they want to do in regard to a motion. We can do 1 motion that would recommend a particular strategy and continuing on with consultants, or separating it out if they choose. So I'm gonna let council make that decision. What would you like to do?
Motion to adopt strategy 4 and to proceed with the $75,000 professional services for implementation of the Waterfront Holland development opportunities.
That was moved by Cthulhu. Is there support? Was that Scott? Was that you?
Support, Corbin.
Support from Scott. Any discussion?
No, I think this is well done, and we heard some of it before, and so this is a nice refresher in process going forward.
Great. Anyone else? Kathy, would you please call the, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Chathui, you got to wave your hand even higher and wider than that.
I let the first one go. I'm not going to let this one go. Just very briefly, the way I look at this, we actually only had 3 to choose from. To me, option or strategy 3 was not even on the table strictly because of the no public process. I think Fran said it earlier that we are very much aware and have been throughout this process for the public input, and to take them out at the last minute or close to the end here just would not be an option. So truth be told, there was only 3 options out there, and option 4 is by far the best.
Anyone else? All right, Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Corbin,
Yes.
Hoekstra,
Yes.
Raymond,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Garcia,
Yes.
Trethewey,
Yes.
Arnshorst,
Yes.
Mayor Box.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Great, thank you. And again, Fran and Terry and Ranadeep, thank you very much for your great work with this and a great presentation tonight. We really appreciate it. Next item on the agenda, item number 13, communications from the city manager. He just looked at the clock, so I don't have to remind him what time it is.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. And I do have some things that I want to walk through tonight, and you'll probably even tell that I'm going to be looking down because I even made notes to myself because I think this is a really important. And so you'll recall that last meeting, I kind of put on your radar that with the pandemic and the importance of this next budget year, we likely would have to make some adjustments to our normal budget kickoff process in January. I discussed a few times with the mayor, and I don't think that, Mayor, you had, and I haven't had any other feedback from council since that point. And certainly you can continue to share your thoughts on this as I kind of do another step and really propose kind of how we construct that process in January, because we're at that point, right, where we need to do that. So we continue to think that the remainder of FY21, so the remainder of this calendar year and the first 6 months of 2021 calendar-wise may become more challenging. But again, as we watch things at the state and the federal level, we think that fiscal year 22 beginning July 1 is really going to start to present some challenges. And because of this, we really need to get started on that staff level work and not otherwise delay the timing of getting into that. And there's 3 really important components that we historically do that really kick off that process that involve, very importantly, public input into that process through Coffee with Council, staff presentations about kind of where we've been, how are things going now, and staff download and information for all of you. And then the council advance, the very key portion, obviously, that you play in leading this process. So let's take each of these individually and kind of the recommendations that I'm bringing to you. For Coffee with Council, that's tentatively had been scheduled for January 6th before that council meeting, and then on Saturday, January 9. And right now I'm going to say we don't expect that this should, or even by law could be done in person on that date. I think we've had, and hopefully you've seen too, that we've had very, very good response in success with our various email public comment options for the public. I think the public has transitioned to that well and uses that effectively. And I think that's been really successful. So I'm suggesting that we heavily publicize and promote a special, let's call it coffeewithcouncil@cityofholland.com email, specifically for the purpose that Coffee with Council kind of be moved to that format, and that we would heavily publicize that in our social media and other press releases and those types of things. So that's kind of the recommendation that I would make to you for Coffee with Council. Staff presentations, you know, we've transitioned, and I think I've heard very positive feedback from all of you of staff doing presentations. You know, when I first came, I think the staff presentations were on the Friday night immediately preceding the Saturday advance. And the first year we had moved that away from the Friday night to some study sessions before the advance. And then last year we further focused on staff really presenting a consistent and in a concise format, a PowerPoint presentation, really kind of making a point on them in that, making that presentation. Even before COVID, I was kind of looking and talking with staff to make another improvement this year. And specifically what we're looking to do that I think really is timely with COVID is that we will, what I'll call, produce roughly 5-minute or less videos. That's not just the department head kind of giving the, here's what's happened in the last year or the 6 months of the fiscal year that we're in, and not just talking about kind of current environment, but then also downloading from their perspective kind of things to take in consideration for constructing FY22. But that we would, so it's not just them talking, you know, in a camera, but that we would produce that and have, you know, the ability to incorporate graphs, the ability to have a picture of the dog park, the ability to highlight when Mark talks about CNF development and progress that we've made on affordable housing, that we can have pictures of Park Vista and Black River Flats and those types of things. So we think that's just really an exciting possibility to make that information more alive and helpful to you. But we also think then that we can do some exciting things of making that more available to the public also. This year, just the way things fall is we only have one study session prior to the advance on January 13. So that's where we would be looking at having that staff presentation in a date on January 13. And then with the advance, it continues to be really critical to have all of you gather and dialogue together. But I think we're still going to be very much challenged on location and format. And I'd almost rather kind of prepare that we're not going to be able to gather in person and then be warmly pleased that maybe we can. But I think we almost need to prepare that we won't be able to. I'm proposing that we would still do a review of the vision, mission, the SWOT, the strength, weakness, opportunities, threats, the major goals. And also I always provide to you kind of the thorough review of where we stand on the 6 months through on the business plan. And I think you absolutely still need to do a check-in on priorities, but maybe do what I'll call a less intense version of building your priorities from the ground up. I think we do a check-in on the ongoing status of priorities from this current year, and if anything has changed dramatically or needs to be added. And really part of my thinking there is, I think many or most of the priorities generated by you last year, while some have been checked off, if you would, I think a lot of them are really big goals that are still actively in process, and certainly want to continue to keep you updated on that. But not because of any delay or lack of progress, but just by their nature, they're multi-year projects or programs. So hopefully the business plan, the quarterly reporting process, and your involvement in many of these priorities has kept you up to date on all of those things. I think then that possibly even creates a little bit more time at the advance for you to continue to have important dialogue as a council. Last year, remember, we had Dave Miedema come in and kind of did a component of a governance review. I think it's important, what I heard from you last time is maybe to have a little bit more open or unstructured time for you to talk rather than doing that process. So I think maybe even if we do kind of a less intense recreate the priorities from ground up, that gives you a little bit more of that time. And I think also we can, depending on your input to the mayor or I or tonight, that we maybe can take a look at another consultant even on doing some team building or working together or different types of things. I think there's a lot of resources that we could do out there, maybe like a Colby, and have all of you do your Colby and kind of understand, you know, kind of how you go about doing decision-making and processes and those types of things. And then we're also pretty excited. I think we're going to have the citizen survey back. So whether we try to fit that into the advance or not, we definitely could do that. Otherwise, we could try to do that download of very important data too sometime in January. But I felt it was kind of my responsibility, and we're kind of at that time where we really need to start structuring and communicating to the public that time. And that's what I'm recommending, and I think would be good. So again, quick recap, Coffee with Council would not be done publicly, but that we'd move that really to a heavy email format, that we would do staff presentations, but they would be video heavy. Still have the opportunity, whether it be in person or probably highly likely via Zoom, that you'd have the opportunity after watching the video to have a Q&A and a discussion with our department leaders. And then the advance, how I just described, where we still absolutely would do it, but perhaps we'd de-emphasize a little bit the process that we went through the last couple of years. Not that we wouldn't do it, not that you wouldn't review it, but that we'd create a little bit more unstructured time for you guys to dialogue together. So with that, Mayor, I've talked with the mayor a little bit about this, partly because I just wanted to hear if he had heard any feedback from any of you. So I'll kick it back to the mayor and go from there.
Okay. Keith, you're right. I have not heard back from anybody. As I listen to what we have talked about, I'll be honest with you and with the rest of council. It doesn't sound terribly exciting and terribly attractive, but that's kind of one of the big problems with this year, is that a lot of the exciting and a lot of the attractive options have simply been taken off the table for the time being, and we got to make the best of a bad situation. And I think through the conversations you and I have had, as we've tried to figure out the best way to deal with the obstacles that we have in front of us. I do agree with you that the people of Holland have found ways to be able to communicate with us rather than face to face. The number of emails that I've dealt with over the last week just in regard to Planning Commission. And I'm going to apologize to all of the city council members who are not on Planning Commission, who received all of those emails as well, because they were sent to council, and then I turned around and forwarded them to the planning comment email address that we have. We've had dozens and dozens, so that the public is definitely doing that. I think if we make the effort to reach out to the public and let them know that this is the process that we're going to do for this year, I think that they will reach back and let us know what they're thinking. I just looked at my calendar while you were talking, Keith, and I think, Scott, you're on the radio tomorrow. And if you could on the radio, let the people of Holland know, or listen to WHTC about the email address, about what the plans are, why it is that we've had to adjust this year, and that we do the best that we can with what we've got. But if other council members have input, I'm all ears. We are looking for good ideas, and we know that you guys have those. But nobody's come forward to us yet with anything, and we need to start moving forward with this so that we get the plans in place. So any comments from folks?
I think those are good ideas. We can't get together in person, so reaching out and then having that staff little videos, I think that's a very viable way, and it gives them participation too.
I'm especially excited about the staff videos, because that gives us an opportunity to share those with the public as well. We don't get a whole lot of people that come to those evening meetings for the staff reports, but I'd love for the community to be able to see what all of our departments are doing, or at least have that opportunity to be able to do that on their schedules.
Yes. And we can't walk around City Hall that much either, so it's kind of nice for us.
Yep, exactly. Any other comments?
I'm liking what I'm hearing, so I'm not even going to raise my hand, Nathan. You don't recognize it anyway.
You're right under me right now.
I'm liking what I'm hearing. I will say, however, that I would then, if we're not going to revisit the governance during during the advance, I'm fine with that. But I'd like to set some time then at a study session early in the year, maybe to have a recap on that, especially since this is the first year for 3 members. just to have a little recap on that again. It's never a bad thing to read, to look at it. Any questions, whatever the case may be. So I'll agree with maybe not the Saturday of the advance, but one of the first few study sessions of 2021, which is going to be a much better year. Positive thinking.
And actually, Mike, I do think right now I would recommend that somehow, some way we do actually spend some time on governance. So I actually think that if we do it this way, we would be able to do that piece right in the advance. I think that's important.
Okay.
Lynn, did you have a comment? Yeah, go ahead. Oh, she's muted.
Oh.
Thank you. I've been sneezing, so I had to keep muting myself. Yeah, this sounds really good. And I was sort of racking my brain trying to figure out a way. I know that a way to connect with people. I know Scott often has these Zoom meetings, and I was thinking, oh, maybe we could all have sort of drop-in Zoom meetings. I don't know. Open office hours. But then when you said the dates, it's like around the corner when we have those, when we start having coffees with the council. So I think the plan you come up with is good, and I think we'll get a lot of feedback. And I would also agree with Mike that it would be helpful to review the governance document as well.
Great. Anyone else?
Yes.
Yeah, Scott.
So thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, Councilman Raymond, for that pitch for my ward meeting. So we have it the third Thursday of every month from 6 to 7 p.m. We've had several of you in attendance and giving presentation. This week, we are having Angelique Joins, who's our public health officer for Allegan County, which represents all of this ward. And she'll be talking about the services they offer, as well as COVID response and what they're doing currently. And then the second speaker will be Jeffrey Owen, who's the Lakeshore Economic Development Director. She'll be speaking about economic growth, in particular in Ward 5, things that Keith has already mentioned earlier today, but kind of let the residents know what's happening, the expansions that are going on, and the things that are happening, and the jobs that are being created. So she'll be speaking to that. I will ask, so a couple of you mentioned providing an email address tomorrow during the talk show. I'll do my best, but what it is, which is particular email you'd like me to address or have them send information to. I think it's just the council. Is that right, City Council?
Coffee with Council is at cityofholland.com.
If that sounds good to everyone, I just kind of threw that out, and Matt's listening. I'm thinking, Matt, we probably can turn that around pretty quick, but I think that's as good as anything. Coffee with Council at cityofholland.com.
Yeah, I think especially for a group like the WHTC listeners who are used to that Coffee with Council name, I think that'll make it easy for them to remember.
cityofholland.com. Okay, I will make sure I bring that forward. But that's all I have. Thank you, everyone.
Great, thanks, Scott. Dave, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I'm cool with the structure of how we give opportunity to the public to offer their opinions, and the staff method of communicating with us. That sounds very cool, maybe even entertaining. I don't know. The one thing that gives me a bit of pause, and I have to digest a little bit because that's what I do, is the kind of, as I'm hearing it, the Vision Light version of the advanced portion. And the reason I pause a little bit on that is because what we do in that portion of our advance, and that is the vision casting, the priority setting, is one of the most important things that we do all year. And I fully understand, as well as anyone, what we're experiencing now. And I know the limitations that puts on us and how it's sort of hamstrung us in a lot of ways. But I'm a little hesitant to give up the opportunity to still engage in that vision casting priority setting exercise. Because maybe it'll take the rest of the year, maybe even longer for us to come out the other end of what we're in right now. But we should still be prepared for that. We should still have vision in front of us. Even if we don't have the opportunity to realize it, I think that's an exercise that we should have the discipline to go through. Maybe not as deeply as we have in the past, but again, I've got to digest that a little bit to even believe what I'm saying right now. But I just want you to know that that's where my head is at. So.
And Dave, Keith and I have talked about this, and I don't think there's any intent to eliminate that at all. I think it actually reflects more of what you just said, which is we still go through that process, but not in the same manner that we did before, because the methods available to us just don't lend themselves to that. But there is still that process. It's probably just going to be not as big a process as it was before. But I don't think either one of us thought to ourselves, well, we don't want council to have the opportunity to be able to lay out their priorities. It's exactly the opposite of that, especially because we've had the limited ability to be able to communicate with one another directly over the course of the last 6 or 8 months. My vision of this is that there will be an opportunity for that. It's just not going to look the same as it has before.
Yeah, obviously we'll probably lose the stickers, and I'm cool with that too.
I figured you'd like that, Dave. And Dave, please, for you and anyone else, if as you kind of digest this and think about that, I'd really enjoy having conversations with you also, if you want to give me a call or send me an email or anything, because that'll help me really try to design a process that best works for all of you, because we need your input into FY22. I think it's going to be a challenging year, but so give me a call anytime, Dave.
Indeed. All right. Thank you.
Anyone else? I'm not seeing any. Wave your hands frantically in the air like Mike if I'm missing you.
Oh, no, about this thing, no.
Okay. Then is that all you have, Keith?
Raul.
Oh, Raul. See, yeah, you got to wave your hands frantically in the air. There you go.
I don't think it's that urgent, or my comments aren't that profound, but I mean, obviously this whole year has been challenging. I mean, I'd say it sucked in terms of our inability to interact the way that I think all of us would love to, especially to engage with the public. But it has been really, really neat to see still the level of engagement that sometimes it even feels like more this year through email and that public comment email. And the coffee with council is, it's essential. I think in years past, I think we've all hoped that more people would participate in this process, in that portion of the process, and maybe this will present an opportunity where we will have more of that kind of engagement. And so, but I do think that there's a population that doesn't email very regularly. I mean, that's just not a mode of their communication, and apparently neither is coffee with council, because I don't see them there either. But if there is something that I guess the way that we announce it, that we promote it, if there's any graphic or some sort of event or something, just that it would be shared directly with us so that we can share it through our own channels as well. I think that would be great.
Thanks, Raul. We'll definitely do that.
Great. Thanks, Raul. Anyone else? All right, Keith, any other things on your comments?
I do, but it's
you have all the time in the world. I'm just kidding.
I'm sorry, but this is kind of cool because it is the last meeting, right? And even though we just talked about priorities and everything, our video crew just put together kind of a look back on the calendar year, and we're pretty proud of it. And I hope that even with all the challenges that we had this year, you guys, all very much share in the hope and all of the stuff that's you're about to see here. So Matt, run this. We hope the sound comes through pretty well.
Yeah, if the sound is a little less than than the quality that we're used to in council chambers. I would encourage you that when we post this, we'll get it out to all of you directly to review as well. Hopefully you can see this.
The neighbors need our help. The people of Holland respond. By working together, we will rally and we will rise.
We had probably close to 40 people call and donate donuts. We made over 1,000 donuts that day. Our original intent was to take them to the Holland and Zeeland hospitals, but because of the amazing response we had, we ended up going to the police department, fire departments, 3 fire stations, and the post office.
The community just came together. I have a village of friends that I'm just so blessed and grateful for. This didn't cost me a dime.
When our community started rallying around us, at first it was kind of shocking to me, and then it's just like a huge hug from everybody.
You can feel the effort trying to help the independent retailers stay afloat during this challenging time.
The response has been overwhelming. I mean, the customers have been very generous with the staff, with tips. It's really quite overwhelming, and it really makes you feel good that they're supporting you.
The downtown support has been amazing. I see tons of people I might not know, just even online, you see all these posts say support local, help businesses, buy gift cards. So our support has been amazing.
Holland's been awesome. The community's been awesome. The city's been awesome. The organizations and nonprofit driven city have been awesome. And it's been really touching to know that people are not, it's not just lip service. There's action behind it. And I think that's a special part.
We have had one couple come in every single day for lunch, another gentleman every single day to pick up his lunch. And it just, they want to be supportive. They are just rooting for us and hoping that we will continue to stay open. The gratuities and the tips that people have left are so amazing.
The city of Holland has been very supportive. Even when we were closed, we had people knocking on the doors, wanting to, buy gift cards from us. So we really appreciate that.
We've had an amazing amount of support from our community, and it's beautiful to see.
To see that other people within Holland and around is supporting us has been great.
How friendly everyone is and how everyone wants to support like the local mom and shop. So it's been really nice to come back and open Market Zero here.
If I could pick anywhere to have a barber shop in Holland, it would be downtown.
In this community, we look for our neighbor that needs our help the most, and we respond because this is Holland, one Holland, and we get to live here.
Incredible work by the video crew. Other than that guy at the beginning and the end needing a haircut, I think it was great.
Suey Trail.
And that's all I have tonight, Mayor. You've listened to me long enough.
Thank you. Matt, do you know when that's going to get posted? Or Keith, do you know when that's going to get posted?
Yeah, it'll be posted by before the end of the year.
Okay.
So I would expect either this week or next.
Okay. Okay. It's not going out right away. It's just,
it may actually go out as soon as, I don't know where it's loaded on the schedule. We wanted to make sure we got it in front of you folks before we released it to the general public. And now that we've done that, we may expedite that a little bit. I think everybody needs to hear how wonderful, we all know how wonderful our town is, but to hear it from the words of the people that aren't, city employees, I think is just, it's pretty emotional to see all the way this town comes together and the words of other folks. So we'll probably up it a little bit too.
Yeah, I think that's a great message to share with the community over the holidays. Yeah. All right. Thank you, City Manager. That was a great 5 minutes. We got that in just under the wire. Appreciate that. I just have a couple of things. I do have one appointment. I am asking the council to accept the reappointment of Roger Ike to the Public Art Advisory Committee for his second full term, said full term expiring December 31 of 2023. And I would entertain a motion to that effect.
Moved.
Moved by Trethewey. Is there support?
Support.
Support. I'm sorry, my screen got all of a sudden changed. Is that you, Dave?
Yeah.
Thanks. You got hidden behind another window. We got motion by Trefouille, support by Hoekstra. Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Hoekstra,
Yes.
Raymond,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Garcia,
Yes.
Trefouille,
Yes.
Arnshorst,
Yes.
Corbin,
Yes.
Mayor Box.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Great. Thank you. I've just got a couple of comments to piggyback on what Keith said. And actually, I was not expecting the video there because that actually covers some of what I was thinking as well. But this is our last meeting of this year. And looking back, I don't think this is what any one of us had expected or would have wanted out of this year. And it's been difficult. It's been really difficult for the people of Holland. But one thing, I did an interview earlier today and somebody asked me what was the best thing that's come out of the last year. And I said, you know what? It was the way that our city staff, our community leadership, and our residents stepped up to support one another. And I think that video really, really exemplifies that. We started this year, we've been talking about the advance. We started this year with big goals. That was a big list that we put in front of staff for this year. And despite the pandemic, I think that we've made some really significant progress on them. And as Keith said, some are multi-year goals. The big four that I recall were affordable housing. And we've got Ryan Kilpatrick in now, not as a full assistant city manager position, but I think we made the smart decision to scale back a little bit on that. But we've got the top guy in housing in-house as a consultant right now. The Unified Development Ordinance. Planning Commission is getting closer to a recommendation. If you haven't looked at your email, they're out there and they're coming. We had 55 people at a Planning Commission meeting yesterday, I think it was. We had 110 last Monday night, another 40 or 50 the week before. People are very interested in talking about this. It's a big bite, and it's going to be big thing that's going to be coming in this next year. The non-discrimination ordinance, despite the pandemic, we got all of those people to be able to voice their opinions, and we got that passed in August. Community energy plan, another one of our big goals. We've got the strategic development team actively working to develop the recommendations that they're going to be bringing to us in the coming months. Waterfront Holland, oh my goodness, what great things that are there. I've been wanting so badly to say to the community, there's movement that's going on with that. And it's great to be able to say that to them, that we've got the next phase of that project moving forward. And in addition to all of that, we've had the regular functions of city government going on with strained resources, with people not being able to work in their regular offices. I'm in City Hall a couple of times a week, and I keep expecting that I'm going to see Marty and Cinca when I walk in the door. I haven't seen Marty or Cinca for weeks. Because they're simply not there. I'm getting sick and tired of seeing Keith and Matt all the time. There's really not anybody else up there to see. And you got to remember that they're doing these jobs with all of that going on. They're carrying the regular weight of the city and all of those priorities that we asked them to fulfill. And they've been doing those things over the course of the year. If we think about just tonight's meeting, we had the best financial audit process possible. We had 500,000 square feet of new construction get tax abatements. 500,000 square feet, 500,000 square feet in one meeting during a pandemic. And there are lots of other construction projects going on in this community as well. Things continue to going on. And so as we look to next year, we've still got a lot on our plate. A lot of the goals that we set last January are still in process. And frankly, we've got an uncertain financial picture at the state and federal level. We got to be cautious about what we do moving forward. So as we're taking time during the upcoming holidays, because it's going to be a few weeks before we see each other again, Dave, I do want us all to be thinking about our visions for the upcoming year and beyond. It's been a year of big challenges, but as I always say, big challenges bring big opportunities. We've got the opportunity to capitalize on all of those roadblocks that COVID put in our way and all the new opportunities that it's going to open up for us. I want to thank all you guys. You guys have given a whole lot of grace this year to me, to staff, to each other. You have adapted to odd working conditions. You've continued to do everything you can to work together and communicate with one another. That means a lot. It's essentially been my first year in this. It's the only system I know at this point. I hope we get back to what normal is, but you guys have done a great job in helping make it be successful throughout the year. And I'm really excited. I am really excited about what the future is going to bring for our community. And I firmly believe that the future of Holland, Michigan is bright. And that's all I have for you tonight. Any communications, motions, announcements from council members? Yes, Nikki.
I'm I hate to follow. I mean, it goes from all that to a whimper here, but I just want to report part of what you were saying on the strategic development team, which met Monday. It was just another Zoom meeting, which is not ideal, but I feel this time the group finally gelled. We're not quite overwhelmed with data and information, but there was a lot to learn and put together. And so finally we had a discussion that reflected that. So that three-legged stool of economic viability, electric, power reliability, and then, reducing carbon footprint in this time, one of our visions, the climate change. So we finally got, we're starting to get our arms around it, and the discussion ended up with the results of this graph that we all filled out, the level of importance we placed on certain opportunities in power and energy. And so I think we're looking at getting a speaker in on solar and wind were two areas that people were interested in. So we may have a speaker on solar energy in January. We're not meeting until January, of course. So solar and wind, and we'll go on from there. All this information is on the city website, the videos of the meetings and all the information that we are reading and looking at. So it's all out there. And talk about civic engagement. We know how to do it, don't we? All the topics we choose. So thanks for everyone for participating, and we'll just keep moving ahead.
Thank you, Nikki. Anyone else? I don't see you waving your arms, Mike, but I'm going to ask you anyway.
Uh-oh.
All right.
Yes. Happy Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. It's been a great year. I'm looking forward to it too. Just January 21 will be the start of my 25th year. So.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
You're old.
Yeah. Yes, I am. But no, I'm looking forward. This year has been a challenge. Jay and Dave can definitely attest to that more than we've had in the past. Each year has been a little bit different, but I'm very optimistic that 2021 is going to be the year of Holland. We're going to surge ahead in a number of different directions. We're not all going to agree. That's what makes the world goes around. But the way that we conduct business is what I greatly appreciate from this group. We have our differences, we have our discussion, we have our vote, and we move on. So, Merry Christmas to all, and to all, a good night.
Thank you, Mike. Scott, I saw your hand up there.
Well, I guess I just forgot. Really, this pandemic has stretched a lot of people very thin. Our public safety, our public health. When you can get that vaccine, please do. And please do get it early as when it's offered. I mean, there's some prioritization of who gets that vaccine, but when you can, we got to mitigate this risk sooner than later. So thank you all the support you've given public safety and public health over the last few months. But we need to continue that. And when we get a chance to give them a big hug, let's give them a big hug. So thank you, everyone.
That'd be nice.
Thank you, Scott. Anyone else? Otherwise, I will entertain just one more motion in 2020.
Motion to put 2020 behind us and adjourn this year.
Moved by Trethewey. Is there support?
Support.
Once.
Support by Garcia. All those in favor say aye.
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 Can I vote on that
Merry
one?
Christmas.
Can I say aye too?
Unanimous.
It was unanimous. We'll see you.
All right, bye-bye, thank you.
Adios.
Good night.